It all starts on a high school track where the teacher is yelling that this run counts as their final grade. Ringo is leading the pack at full speed, feeling super confident that he will finally win this time. He pushes himself even harder after noticing a special girl watching his performance. Is this MC seriously starting out as a total simp? The young lady watches everything looking pretty worried, while the rest of the class just spectates the race. But the school bullies show up right, behind him with unfriendly smirks, ready to cause some trouble. The guy with white hair even finds Ringo's effort cute, but he is already preparing to ruin his day. Suddenly, the other students begin transforming into beasts and charge forward to run right over the poor MC. One of them flies straight at Ringo with sharp claws, violently telling him to get out of the way. The poor guy takes a terrible fall on the track while the others pass him by, laughing at the fact that he does not know how to transform. The teacher rushes over in worry to check on Ringo, who is left sprawled out on the ground after getting trampled. Coughing heavily, he realizes that cheap shot was aimed straight at his head and feels thankful he managed to block it. Even though he is bleeding badly, Ringo prefers to swallow his pride and suffer in silence to avoid starting even more trouble. The purple-haired girl looks completely horrified as she sees the puddles of blood dripping onto the track floor. The bullies still mock him, saying he bled because he was way too slow and was blocking their path. Ringo knows that is just cheap provocation and decides to keep his distance so he does not fall for their game. He asks the teacher for permission to go to the nurse's office while the aggressors call him a total coward. But the bad guys make it clear that the humiliation is far from over, promising to make Ringo beg for mercy tonight. At that school, everyone has the ability to transform into a powerful beast except for our MC. He explains that this transformation requires forming a bond with a beast, but he has never even gotten close to doing that. Even though he is considered a loser, he feels a mysterious force calling out to him and believes it is about to show up very soon. Suddenly, someone wearing stylish sneakers approaches Ringo and calls out to snap him out of his thoughts. It is his cat-eared friend, who immediately tells him to get on his knees for getting beat up like a total loser again. Wait, a cat girl? Garfield brags about being second to last in the class and says she is tired of always beating him just by being a tiny bit better. Does she also hate Mondays? Ringo does not even care about the teasing and simply asks for the small milk carton, leaving the girl completely shocked. He drinks the milk calmly and explains that he has already memorized her habits whenever she tries to comfort him. Garfield makes up the classic excuse that she was going to teach those bullies a lesson, but suffered a sudden stomach ache. She gets excited, imagining that he might awaken a legendary beast, while he tells her to stop reading web novels on the internet. But the girl finds it strange that he cannot transform, considering he is a very smart guy in everyday life. He snaps back ironically, saying that reading people is just a basic self-defense tactic for survival. She then reveals that she organized a secret study group behind the school to finally teach him how to transform. Ringo looks on in shock, unable to believe that she, of all people, would be leading a study group. He simply turns his back and says he prefers to use that precious time to go to sleep and recharge his energy. Determined not to take no for an answer, the girl quickly grabs his shirt tightly to stop him. Garfield begins to tremble and begs with a teary face worthy of an award-winning movie, making Ringo look back in surprise. The very next second, she bursts out laughing, mocking his face for falling for her cheap act once again. She says goodbye, telling him to just try to keep up with her steps during training later tonight. Ringo stands still watching his friend leave, knowing very well that she just wants to help him in her own twisted way. Later that night, the girl walks through the dark woods behind the school and starts feeling a little uneasy. Suddenly, the silhouettes of the bullies emerge from the darkness, giving her an eerie welcome. The white-haired bully is sitting on top of a defeated creature, complaining that she did not bring Ringo along. On the ground lies a deer creature that was brutally knocked out by them, serving as a warning of what happens to anyone who crosses their path. Hidden in the bushes, Ringo watches Garfield make up a story that he had a massive stomachache and could not make it. But the excuse does not work, and she ends up getting slapped. He explains that their method involves absorbing the power of others as if it were dietary supplements. Displaying terrifying demonic forms, the bullies ask what is going to be served on their late-night snack menu. The girl becomes completely paralyzed with panic as she realizes that she herself has become the main course tonight. A shout echoes through the forest telling them to stop, immediately catching the attention of the entire bully gang. The attackers get confused, trying to figure out who would be crazy enough to show up and ruin their plans there. Ringo quickly appears behind Garfield and covers her mouth, telling her to stay very quiet so she is not spotted. He asks if this was her famous study group, while the poor girl cries out of relief, seeing that he came to rescue her. Ringo warns that they need to discuss the details of that bizarre study group far away from there and starts backing away. But before running off, he uses his phone to play a fake audio clip simulating the arrival of the security team. The plan works like a charm, and the white-haired bully panics upon realizing it was just a tricky recording. He looks around furiously, trying to figure out where the cat girl hid with the help of her mysterious accomplice. Hidden in the shadows of the bushes, the two friends continue their silent escape, hoping not to attract any attention. Unfortunately, heavy footsteps echo right near them, revealing that someone managed to track their perfect escape route. The person stepping out in front of them is Shilly, who asks with a very cynical smile what kind of game they are playing there. Ringo tries to warn the girl that the place is dangerous, but soon notices something very strange in her intent and her gaze. Sensing the imminent danger, Garfield jumps forward, pushing her friend away and telling him to dodge the incoming attack. The poor kitty ends up taking the full force of the blow and flies straight into a tree. The impact was so severe that the poor girl passes out on the ground immediately. Shilly praises the boy's quick reflexes, while the white-haired bully approaches, treating the villainess with absolute respect. She reveals that she always wanted to capture Ringo and uses a magical web to bind his wrist, revealing her extra spider eyes. The villainess finds it very bizarre that he attracts her so much even without being able to transform. Looking terrifying, she licks her lips, confessing that she feels an inexplicable attraction to his blood. Ringo lets out a scream of pain as the spider web begins to slice into his skin and tear pieces from his arm. Shilly enters an ecstatic state, saying the smell of his blood is insanely sweet, reminiscent of an ancient and completely pure flavor. Knowing there is no other way out to escape, Ringo pulls out a small pocket knife and prepares for the worst. The villainess merely scoffs at his attitude, claiming her spider webs are infinitely stronger than steel. Completely ignoring her warning, the MC shouts with all his strength and delivers a desperate swing with the blade. Eager to devour him, the Spider-Woman yells that she will leave him full of holes just like a watering can. I am really not liking where this hole talk is going. Ringo refuses to give up fighting for his life at that critical moment. The boy uses his own injured hands to grip the web with extreme firmness, even if it costs him his physical well-being. In a crazy and brave move, he forces his arm joint to break free from the grip of that thread. Shilly is left completely bewildered and speechless upon witnessing the painful and unexpected sacrifice the boy just made. With a broken arm and bleeding heavily, Ringo twists his body to use the pocket knife and finally cut the thread holding him. The bullies stand in absolute shock upon realizing that he broke his own limb on purpose just to be able to run away. He takes advantage of the villain's temporary distraction and sprints into the dense forest, leaving a red trail behind him. Furious over the boy's escape, the spider leader orders her henchmen to stop slacking off and go after the runaway immediately. Out of breath and losing consciousness, Ringo feels his legs give out as he realizes he will not be able to run for much longer. He presses on the severe wound on his arm, knowing very well that the continuous bleeding will end his life very soon. As he pushes through the dark, desperation takes over, and the young man begins to wonder if this will really be his end. But in the middle of all that agony, he suddenly feels that strange and powerful vibration calling out to him again. A reddish glow emerges in the distance, and the MC realizes that something mysterious is summoning his presence there. Right as he locates the light, the white-haired brute leaps in his direction, shouting that he finally captured him. To the absolute shock of all his pursuers, Ringo prefers to take a leap of faith and throws himself directly off the edge of a cliff. He plunges into a free fall while the criminals watch the scene, unable to believe the boy's madness. Shilly refuses to accept such boldness and orders her men to head down immediately to bring his body back. Miraculously, Ringo survives the free fall cushioned by the leaves and lies on the ground, breathing with great difficulty. Nearby, the entrance of an abandoned, run-down metallic structure stands out in the middle of that dense forest. Following the red spots, the henchmen easily figure out that the injured boy crawled inside that place. The henchman finds it strange that such a facility exists at the school, but Shilly tells him to shut up and keep moving. The group walks carefully down the dark hallway, following the red trail. Looking up, they realize they are in the middle of a massive scientific laboratory that looks like it has been decommissioned for years. At the back of the dark room, the villainess finally spots Ringo's silhouette kneeling under a strong, bizarre reddish light. But as they get a little closer, all three stand completely paralyzed. A gigantic and monstrous scaly creature emerges from the shadows of the ceiling, glaring down at the group of intruders. The immense monster with flaming eyes focuses all its attention on Ringo, who returns the gaze with impressive courage. Trembling in fear, the pursuers stammer, unable to believe the identity of the terrible being standing right before them. Shilly panics upon seeing a genuine dragon, considered a legendary divine beast that went extinct over 20 years ago. Ringo finally puts the pieces together and understands once and for all that this mystical creature was the one calling out to him. At that moment, intense flames begin to wrap around the young man's body, healing all his wounds and awakening a hidden power. Shilly senses the danger and orders her henchmen to attack Ringo immediately before he finishes the transformation process. But brave Garfield jumps in front once again to protect her childhood friend, taking a fatal attack in his place. The poor kitty falls severely injured, coughing up a lot of blood, making it clear that the situation has become extremely critical for her. Almost out of strength, she apologizes to her friend for dragging him into that trap, which she naively thought was just a study session. The villainess kicks Garfield's body out of the way without an ounce of mercy, telling the brat not to get in the way of her plans. Seeing his only friend being treated like that, the MC unleashes an overwhelming rage, his eyes flashing with pure hatred. He moves faster than the wind to catch the girl's body in midair, preventing her from taking an even worse impact on the ground. The little kitty opens her eyes and stands completely frozen upon seeing the new monstrous and imposing appearance of her best friend. Ringo now displays the form of an extremely intimidating draconic creature, complete with sharp claws and flaming horns. Shilly starts burning just from getting close to the young man, screaming in desperation due to the absurd heat his body radiates. The bullies fall into complete panic as they realize that the loser boy has just transformed into the legendary Dragon King. Without thinking twice, the two cowards turn around and start running desperately to try and save their own skins. Ringo sets his friend down on the ground very gently and tells her to rest a bit because his fun is just about to start. He flexes his sharp, draconic claws, ready to slice through anyone who crosses his path. Moving at absurd speed, he dashes toward the runaways, looking like a true dark blur that is impossible to dodge. He appears right in front of the white-haired bully, reminding the coward that he was the one who just hit poor Garfield. Without giving any time for a response, Ringo delivers a brutal strike that sends the villain straight to the ground, completely knocked out. The other henchman tries to defend himself, saying he had nothing to do with the attack and begs on his knees not to be hit. But the MC remembers that this was the exact guy who tried to strike his head during training and gets ready for payback. In the blink of an eye, the henchman is struck so fast and surgically that he does not even process what just happened. With both sidekicks defeated on the ground, Shilly continues to suffer intensely from the unbearable heat of Ringo's flames. Completely desperate and out of options, she begins to cry, begging for the young man's forgiveness to try to escape demise. She tries to use her charm, saying she will give herself completely to him and that he can do whatever he wants with her body. On the inside, the snake believes men are easy to fool and plans to escape using an empty shell while hiding in her web. Shilly's true body begins to crawl stealthily along the ceiling webs, thinking her escape plan worked out great. She visualizes returning with an army of spiders to devour the weakened dragon and make Ringo pay dearly for this. She plans to turn the MC into her humblest slave, but is interrupted by the young man's cold and attentive gaze fixed on her. Shilly goes into total shock upon realizing that the boy seems to be reading her deepest thoughts with extreme ease. he simply stares right back at her, keeping his cool while preparing to end that foolishness once and for all. In a quick move, Ringo's dragon tail strikes up like a whip and grabs the villainess's true body off the room ceiling. He calmly asks why she thought she could fool his eyes with such a cheap illusion trick. Cornered with no way out, Shilly realizes her tragic fate is sealed. Ringo delivers a devastating blow to the villainess, making her face swell up instantly and shattering all her arrogance. She falls unconscious, and he coldly advises her to try being a better person in her next life so she does not end up like this again. Right after that, the young man feels that absurd and overwhelming dragon energy starting to fade from his own body. He returns to his normal human form and looks intrigued at the imposing ancestral dragon standing right before his eyes. Ringo approaches and asks in a calm tone of voice if the energy is fading because the creature is about to pass away. The dragon expels a massive blast of fire that consumes its entire giant body in a visual spectacle of light and heat. The boy watches it all in awe, showing no fear whatsoever in the face of that massive amount of pure energy. All those flames condense and turn into a dark egg, representing the rebirth of the legendary mystical creature. Looking at his own hands, Ringo finally understands what true gift the Dragon King left behind for him. He holds the egg affectionately and notices a small crack opening up, revealing a tiny red eye. The next day, the scene shifts to the school dorms, where a groan of pain breaks the quiet morning silence. Garfield wakes up confused on a bunk bed and comes face to face with Ringo, who lets her know she is finally awake. Rubbing her head, she complains that her whole body hurts terribly and asks where exactly they are right now. He explains very directly that this is his room and that nobody wanted to share a dorm room with a loser like him. The girl goes into full panic mode, thinking he took advantage of the situation and screams desperately demanding answers. Ringo simply responds calmly that he did not do anything at all. Garfield starts recalling last night, but thinks it is impossible for a loser like Ringo to turn into a dragon, deciding it was all just a dream. Feeling a terrible headache, the little kitty decides to simply go back to sleep quietly under her blankets. Ringo even considers making up an excuse to hide the baby dragon from her, but quickly gives up on the idea. He decides to be completely honest and reveals to Garfield once and for all that she was not dreaming at all. The girl makes a funny face and asks suspiciously if he is not just daydreaming in the middle of the day. He reflects in silence that the power from last night was temporary, and that now he needs to train hard to strengthen the skill. Now, who noticed the mistake in this panel? Feel free to comment. Holding the tiny little monster in his arms, the young man swears to himself that he will regain all that overwhelming strength from before. When Garfield finally looks down, her eyes go wide, and she enters a state of total shock upon seeing the small creature. The kitty has an extreme cute attack and starts screaming with joy, saying she wants to pet that adorable baby right away. Ringo warns that they need to keep this an absolute secret, as many bad people would do anything to get their hands on a dragon like this. Garfield excitedly agrees and says that now they are official partners, and they will take care of the little guy like a real family. But the free rider ruins the sweet moment by asking which of the two will be the child's father, leaving Ringo with a look of pure boredom. With no time for jokes, he changes the subject and asks her to tell him everything she knows about that mysterious and dangerous study group. Meanwhile, somewhere else, the president of that group is desperate, sending thousands of needy love messages to Shilly, who has been missing for days. The guy cries, saying he spent the whole night singing serenades outside her dorm, and dramatically concludes that something terrible has happened. The fool starts imagining the worst possible scenario for the sudden disappearance of his favorite villainess in that school. With the silhouette of a giant bear behind him, the president yells furiously that Shilly definitely found another man in her life. He throws himself weeping onto his secretary's shoulder, saying he no longer wants to live, while the other tries to back away in disgust from his runny nose. Secretary Daishu loses his patience and threatens to end President Kong Wei's life if he ruins his suit with snot again. Daishu reveals that Shilly was very interested in a specific boy lately and promises to thoroughly investigate this guy named Ringo. Back in the room, the baby dragon starts whining in pain, leaving Ringo and Garfield extremely worried and not knowing what to do. But the mystery quickly ends when the little monster simply drops a nice big pile of green poop right in the middle of their room. Garfield laughs her head off and appoints Ringo as the official waste collector, reminding him that he was the one who said they were a united family. Next, the hatchling starts crying from hunger, and the two realize that taking care of a baby dragon is an infinitely harder task. Garfield remembers that Uncle Jiao Da from the logistics department used to work as a beast tamer and definitely knows what dragons eat. Ringo tells his friend to keep watch over the room while he heads out to fetch food, but ends up running into someone else along the way. It is Mu Ye from the logistics department, who appears surrounded by dozens of cute little puppies and mentions that old Uncle Jiao Da is drunk. Based on the description of the animal, the young man explains that baby reptiles need a lot of protein, which means quality meat. He then invites Ringo to try the grilled skewers that the logistics department itself prepares for the students. Ringo takes a bite of the BBQ skewer and is amazed to realize the meat is so tender it melts in his mouth. But the peace does not last long when greedy Garfield shows up out of nowhere and starts devouring several grilled fish along with them. Ringo gets desperate upon seeing that she brought the baby dragon hidden in her backpack, taking a massive risk of getting caught by everyone. The free rider tells him to chill out, saying the hatchling also needed some fresh air and that she knows very well what she is doing. She stealthily opens the backpack, showing the small dragon eating the grilled meat in pure happiness. Seeing there is no stopping her, Ringo tells the little creature to eat fast so they can get out of there quickly before someone spots the scene. The MC thinks to himself that he needs to find a safe hideout soon for the dragon to grow, since the scary study group will be coming after him. Suddenly, someone approaches quietly behind Ringo and grabs him by the shoulder in an extremely creepy and unexpected way. The young man gets a huge fright and stands completely frozen with wide eyes as he feels that sinister presence on him. The mysterious individual stares at him with a dark, intense look, exuding an aura of pure threat and imminent danger. He starts smelling Ringo's neck in a bizarre way, whispering that the boy has Shilly's sweet perfume soaked into his clothes. Garfield recognizes the intruder immediately and screams in terror upon realizing it is the feared president of the study group. Even Mu Ye, who was tending to the grill, turns around with a serious look after noticing the trouble brewing right there. Ringo goes on high alert, connecting the bizarre man with the terrible stories his friend had just told him back in the room. She had revealed that President Kong Wei is the big leader of the group and the one responsible for the disappearance of several students at the school. The guy is known for being one of the strongest students in the entire grade, acting with total arrogance because of his wealthy background. She also explained that his power is not physical, but rather a mental ability capable of taking complete control over his target. Ringo tries to react, but realizes in horror that his body has frozen completely, confirming the terrifying power of mind manipulation. But what the villain did not expect was that the tiny dragon hidden in the backpack was also paying close attention to that sudden threat. In a swift strike, the little monster bites the attacker's finger super hard, making the president writhe in pain at that exact moment. With the villain's concentration completely broken by the bite, Ringo finally manages to regain his movement and frees himself from the control. Ringo knows he cannot start a fight right there in front of everyone and tries to cook up a quick plan to calm the bully down. He remembers Garfield's warning about the president being a total, hopelessly infatuated fan who would do anything for Shilly. Thinking fast, the boy says with the straightest face in the world that Shilly used to speak very highly of Kong Wei to everyone. The president instantly shifts his posture and asks, curious and surprised, how he dares call his beloved by her first name. Ringo lies, claiming he wanted to join the study group, but Shilly told him that only the president had the authority to approve it. Kong Wei stands completely frozen and amazed to hear that his beloved Shilly valued his opinion and authority so much. Giving a thumbs up, Ringo confirms the lie with absolute naturalness, assuring him that she always talked about him fondly. The foolish president begins to cry out of sheer emotion, screaming to the sky that his beloved has finally revealed her love for him. Overcome with emotion, he instantly approves Ringo's entry into the study group, believing Sheely was just too shy to ask herself. Completely out of his mind, the guy grabs Garfield and shakes the girl, shouting like a lunatic that Sheely finally loves him. He runs off through the courtyard, hugging random strangers, inviting everyone to the wedding party he has already planned out. Ringo and his friend let out a sigh of relief and begin walking away from that ridiculous scene under the watchful eyes of the vice president. Dai Shu approaches while wiping his mouth and compliments Ringo's quick wit for manipulating the president so brilliantly. The two friends look back startled, realizing that the guy wearing dark glasses is much smarter than he appears. The individual introduces himself officially as Dai Shu and extends his hand, welcoming our hero to the study group. Ringo accepts the handshake amicably, but senses that handshake hides some very dangerous hidden motives. With a very cynical smile, the vice president asks if it is really true that the young man cannot use any transformation. At that exact moment, he squeezes Ringo's hand with brutal force, trying to test the boy's physical limits and endurance. The MC realizes he is being tested and decides to hide his new draconic powers, playing weak to fool him. He lets out a fake scream of agonizing pain, even though he knows very well that ridiculous squeeze does not even tickle his current body. He recalls Garfield's warning that this vice president transforms into a kangaroo with extremely strong and dangerous arms. But the most valuable piece of information he remembers is that Dai Shu has a severe phobia of any kind of dirt or germs. Taking advantage of this, Ringo pulls his hand back, revealing that it was completely smeared with his baby dragon's green poop. Dai Shu looks at his own filthy hand and falls into absolute despair upon noticing that gross, smelly mess. With the most innocent look in the world, the young man apologizes, saying that gathering waste comes with his new job working with animals. He takes the opportunity to rub his dirty hand all over the villain's face, touching each cheek and his forehead, while the guy screams in horror. Completely enraged, the vice president reveals his kangaroo ears and lands a violent punch right on Ringo's chest. The impact is so strong that it creates a massive dust screen and makes Garfield scream desperately, calling out her injured friend's name. The monster in glasses, growling in anger, says that insolent worm just signed his own death warrant by playing games with him. Ringo falls to the ground, coughing up quite a bit of blood, while the cat girl runs over desperately trying to help her fallen partner. He whispers for her to make the most of the dramatic moment to demand a fat medical compensation payout, pretending his condition is fatal. Garfield gets the plan and starts screaming theatrically, accusing the villain of cowardice for beating up a humble guy with no powers. She appeals to the people around them, demanding justice and insisting that the attacker pay for all their healthcare costs. The attacker grinds his teeth, dying of rage and embarrassment upon noticing that all the attention in the courtyard was drawn to that scene. To make the two shut their mouths, he throws a huge stack of cash bills into the air, telling them to take it all and get lost. Wasting no time, Garfield dives to the ground to collect every single dropped bill, mockingly thanking the villain for his generosity. With pockets full of cash, the kitty celebrates, saying the plan worked out great and that now they can head to the hospital. Ringo flashes a mischievous smile, revealing that the fake blood was actually just hot sauce he grabbed on the sly from the BBQ stand. The girl complains that she almost died of fright, but praises his flawless plan to score easy money off that rich kangaroo. The young man notices that his body has become incredibly durable thanks to the dragon's power, which covered his skin with invisible scales. Ringo decides to split the big cash they managed to snag from the rich kid so they can start buying supplies for the little monster. He sets aside a solid portion to secure the food and chew toys the baby dragon will be needing throughout the week. The boy hands the rest to his friend as payment for the fine acting job she performed in front of everyone. Garfield's eyes sparkle with happiness upon receiving her well-deserved payment in such an easy and completely fair way. She celebrates joyfully while Ringo safely carries the little monster in his backpack back to their dorms. The young man shows a serious look, knowing very well that the challenges of raising that legendary creature are only just beginning. He analyzes that the food situation is handled, but now he urgently needs to find a trustworthy beast tamer to help him out. Lost in thought, the boy starts jotting down several possible names to nickname the small-winged reptile that now lives with him. Suddenly, the room door flies open, and Garfield comes running in, calling for her friend in a complete panic. She shows the small red dragon burning up with a fever and nervously warns that the hatchling's tiny body is way too hot. The thermometer confirms Garfield's worst suspicions, reading that the poor hatchling is dealing with a bizarre fever of 104 degrees. They know the school's medical department would be their salvation, but that would end up exposing the forbidden dragon to everyone. Worried, Ringo decides to take action himself and reassures his friend that he will figure out a quick way to cool down the reptile's body. The young man rushes to prepare a basin of water and starts wringing out wet cloths in a desperate attempt to bring down the temperature. He also applies special cooling patches meant for children's fevers, hoping human products will have some effect on the beast. But the situation gets completely out of control when the thermometer spikes wildly, crossing the terrifying mark of 140 degrees. Garfield goes into total panic, commenting that any normal creature from that school would be completely dead with all this heat. Desperate, the kitty screams, asking what they are going to do, while the MC holds the scalding little monster in his arms. With a focused look, Ringo realizes that the only option left to save the little creature's life is to find a real doctor. He decides to go alone to the emergency room late at night to avoid drawing attention, asking his loyal friend to wait at the dorms. But danger lurks in the shadows, as Vice President Daishu keeps monitoring his steps from afar, eyeing that suspicious backpack. The young man, disguised in a cap and mask, finally arrives at the veterinary hospital building, which is almost completely deserted at that hour. Suddenly, a friendly little corgi dog using a custom wheelchair comes happily trotting down the empty hallways. A young female doctor with glasses and a white coat waits with open arms for the small dog, who seems to be her absolute favorite at that hospital. She affectionately hugs the little dog named Ruby, praising his excellent performance in his daily physical rehab tasks. Two gossiping women criticize the doctor for wasting money on a disabled mutt and try to push more expensive breeds on her. Irritated by the intrusion, Dr. Fan mutters with disdain that those materialistic, heartless ladies know nothing about love. The women walk away complaining about her lack of manners, while Ringo watches the whole argument sitting in the waiting room. They whisper that the doctor is a weird loner with no friends, while Ringo observes her carefully from behind his disguise. Other patients leave the building complaining about the doctor's expensive prescriptions, accusing her of being a quack who deserves to be reported soon. Alone in her office, Fan vents to the little dog Ruby, thinking that maybe she really has no talent for pursuing a medical career. Suddenly, the door handle is turned firmly, interrupting the young vet's moment of venting and gloom. Ringo gently opens the door, revealing only his dark and mysterious silhouette in the doorway of the illuminated hospital office. The doctor looks up extremely startled upon coming face to face with that completely hooded and masked young man in the middle of the night. The young man steps in and asks directly why that small dog on wheels is so important in her personal life. Fan adjusts her glasses nervously and asks angrily if he is some kind of crazy stalker spying on other people's routines. She goes on the defensive and ends up spilling the whole tragic story of how the little dog lost his back legs to protect her. The MC finds it amusing to realize that the girl ended up telling her whole life story by accident, while she laments being a useless doctor. Ringo analyzes her sincere reaction in silence and concludes that this weird, dedicated young woman truly deserves his vote of confidence. He mentions that he has a sick little pet, but asks her to swear to keep absolute secrecy about everything she sees from that moment on. Exuding professionalism, Fan guarantees that a good doctor must always respect privacy and the sacred bond between humans and beasts. Ringo begins unbuttoning his jacket to retrieve the patient, leaving the doctor a bit confused and wary of his movements. He carefully unzips the backpack, revealing that the mysterious creature inside also saved his life in the forest. He pulls out the tiny red dragon that is burning up with a fever of almost 160 degrees, begging the young doctor to save the hatchling. Both the doctor and the little corgi Ruby stand in absolute shock with their mouths wide open, unable to process what they are seeing right there. Fan stammers, unable to believe her own eyes as she verifies that the masked boy's mysterious patient is indeed a legendary dragon. She swallows hard and breaks into a cold sweat, closely examining the mythological creature that was supposed to have been extinct for many decades in the world. The doctor worriedly explains that she has never treated such a beast in her life, since school textbooks do not even cover extinct animals. But she quickly remembers that the hospital's old library might have rare historical records and decides to go hunt down the information immediately. Friendly Fan invites the young man to accompany her to the library in case he is too worried about leaving the small hatchling alone. The MC turns down the invitation in his mind, as he needs to test the girl's loyalty before trusting her with his most valuable secret. On top of that, he needs time and space to deal with the kangaroo vice president who has been tracking his steps ever since the dorms. Ringo says out loud that he prefers to wait right there in the office, assuring her that he is placing all his hopes in her work. Quite surprised by the trust placed in her, the young doctor simply nods and agrees to go fetch the research books. She rushes out of the office accompanied by the corgi on wheels, leaving Ringo alone to await the return of his new ally. Out in the outer hallway, Fan runs enthusiastically, chatting with the little dog about the fantastic discovery of a real dragon. Her eyes sparkling with pure happiness, she celebrates with Ruby that the world is still an incredible place full of magical possibilities. But her joy is abruptly cut short when terrifying Daishu blocks her path right in the middle of the dark courtyard. The doctor stops running immediately and takes a few steps back in fear upon coming face to face with that guy in a suit and dark glasses. The vice president approaches intimidatingly, forcing the young woman and her little dog to back up under the cold light of the hospital lampposts. Fan adjusts her glasses and mocks the villain's ridiculously low-cut shirt, ironically asking if that is supposed to be some form of harassment. With no time for jokes, Daishu aggressively demands that the doctor spill immediately what the MC was hiding inside that backpack. He reflects that Ringo chose to protect the backpack instead of defending himself, deducting that the secret contents have a direct link to Sheely's disappearance. With a dark gaze, the vice president repeats the question, making it clear that his curiosity and patience have reached their absolute limit. Showing great courage, the doctor refuses to answer, stating that medical confidentiality between her and her patient will never be broken. The attacker grabs her by the neck and sadistically explains that the physical strength of his kangaroo transformation is 10 times greater than a human's. He squeezes her throat with brutal force, demanding that she tell the truth once and for all, while the poor woman screams in agony. Even while suffocating, Fan smiles defiantly and calls him an idiot, guaranteeing she will not tell him a single thing. The villain squeezes her neck even harder, but the doctor continues calling the attacker an idiot with whatever breath she has left. Seeing his owner in danger, brave Corgi Ruby charges forward in his wheelchair, barking loudly to try to defend his only family. But the cowardly vice president kicks the poor disabled dog away without the slightest remorse, making the little animal cry out in pain. Fan screams desperately for her beloved little dog upon seeing the state the tiny animal was left in after the monster's violent strike. Daishu threatens to stomp on the injured corgi again if the doctor keeps refusing to reveal the secret she was keeping in the room. The little dog continues whining in pain on the ground while the attacker prepares to deliver another cowardly blow to the helpless little being. The doctor watches it all, completely terrified and weeping in despair, not knowing how to save the life of her only loyal companion. Suddenly, a heavy stone cuts through the air at high speed out of the darkness, flying straight toward the attacker's face. The projectile hits Daishu's dark glasses dead on, making the villain step back and release the young doctor's neck immediately. The villain wipes his face with disdain and smiles cynically, realizing the backpack owner finally decided to stop hiding in the woods. Ringo emerges from the shadows and steps protectively in front of the doctor, his gaze focused and ready to start the real battle. He apologizes for dragging her into this mess, but she assures him she was merely fulfilling her professional duty as a doctor. The young man remarks that she could have simply spilled the secret to avoid getting hit, but admires the unwavering loyalty she demonstrated. Fan fires back, saying she was the one who agreed to keep the secret first, and that a true professional never goes back on their word. Ringo thanks her sincerely for the support and realizes she is truly a completely trustworthy person to help him raise the hatchling. He asks her to keep searching for information in the library, as the baby dragon's temperature has already crossed the 160-degree mark. The doctor agrees right away and rushes back inside the hospital accompanied by Ruby the corgi to start researching urgently. Furious at seeing the woman run off, the vice president leaps forward with a clenched fist, yelling that nobody gave her permission to leave, but Ringo blocks the devastating attack using his own arm, generating an absurd shockwave that covers the young vet's escape. Daishu realizes the previous weakness was pure acting and concludes a normal person could never stop a strike with that much power. He then begins unleashing a rapid sequence of heavy punches, forcing our hero to defend himself while backing up through the courtyard. The attacker brags, saying his technique of repeated strikes on the exact same spot will break Ringo's defense barrier sooner or later. Ringo gets pushed back by the accumulated force of the blows, but stays calm, coldly analyzing his opponent's predictable moves. The MC realizes the vice president relies way too much on the raw power of transformation and has extremely weak basic fighting fundamentals. Strange wisps of smoke start coming out of the backpack, drawing the villain's attention as he screams, demanding Ringo hand over his secret monster. Glancing to the side, Ringo realizes with concern that the baby dragon's tiny body is reaching its extreme limit and will not hold out much longer. With no time to waste on that annoying kangaroo, he decides to lure his opponent to an isolated, deserted spot to finish the fight quickly. Daishu takes the bait instantly and chases after the MC, yelling furiously that the guy in the hoodie does not have the slightest chance of escaping him. While pursuing Ringo, the villain calls the president, warning that the boy is hiding a rare beast and deducting that Shilly was taken out by him. He mentions he will keep tracking the target and tells the group leader to hurry over with reinforcements to guarantee the fugitive's capture. Wearing a grim expression, Kong Wei orders them to bring his uncle along, as a colossal black-furred creature emerges right behind the villain. Out in the school courtyard, the president runs straight into Mu Ye and complains with contempt upon seeing the white-haired boy blocking his path. Kong Wei arrogantly warns that he is in a huge hurry and tells the guy to get out of the way immediately before things get ugly. But Mu Ye firmly holds a leather whip in his hands and determinedly demands that the president give his Uncle Jiao Da back right now. The massive black dog with glowing red eyes growls menacingly as a tense standoff begins between the two students in the dark courtyard. Far away from there, Ringo keeps running through the dense forest, trying to draw Daishu away from any witnesses who might ruin his plan. Inside the backpack, the baby dragon begins to glow intensely in shades of red, releasing an absurd amount of hot smoke. The MC feels extreme heat against his back and desperately realizes the little monster's fever has definitely crossed 200 degrees. Meanwhile, at the hospital library, Dr. Fan runs her fingers quickly across the book spines, searching for records about dragons. Desperate, she runs through the massive aisles of shelves, flipping through dozens of old pages in search of any cure for the fever. In her hurry, she ends up bumping head-on into a mysterious girl with long white hair and a black mask walking through the area. A book of ancient prints falls to the floor, and the white-haired stranger calmly mentions that the doctor dropped her material. The mysterious hooded girl with long white locks continues on her way in silence, slowly walking away down the library hallways. Fan looks back quite intrigued, trying to figure out who that strange young woman who crossed her path could be. As she focuses her attention on the floor, she spots a notebook with a childish dragon drawing scribbled on the cover that the stranger dropped. Forgetting about the library, Ringo feels the heat coming from his backpack becoming absurdly unbearable and dangerous. Curious about the notebook, the doctor quickly begins flipping through the pages filled with old notes and detailed anatomical illustrations. She is surprised to realize she is holding a handwritten journal containing valuable secrets about mystical creatures. Pointing at the text, she joyfully celebrates upon finding the exact answer to the fever consuming Ringo's small reptile. At the same time in the forest, Ringo looks tensely at the smoking backpack, realizing the hatchling's transformation is about to happen. He continues running at high speed while dangerous kangaroo Dai Shu relentlessly pursues him in the woods with bloodlust. The villain laughs sadistically, asking if the boy is tired of running and finally ready to accept defeat right then and there. Ringo decides to stop running and unzips the backpack, which exhales an absurd amount of red smoke and unbearable heat. The doctor reads in the journal that dragon hatchlings undergo fever spikes of up to 300 degrees near a full moon to develop their glands. Without any warning, the vice president unleashes a lethal strike, yelling that this is the absolute end for our stubborn MC. The backpack gets thrown into the air with force, but Ringo nimbly dodges the deadly impact, leaving his attacker confused. Dai Shu grabs the empty bag in midair and starts ripping it apart furiously, convinced the boy's secret was locked inside. His eyes go wide upon realizing the backpack is completely empty and that he was tricked in a ridiculous way by the MC. The villain looks around completely bewildered, unable to understand how the boy managed to make the mysterious creature vanish right before his eyes. It is at that moment that Ringo reveals himself standing, with the small red dragon resting imposing and bright right on his shoulder. The reptile's gaze glows intensely, indicating that its internal flames of energy were finally activated and ready to burn everything down. Dai Shu fixes his eyes on the flaming little creature, and his confident expression is instantly replaced by indescribable despair. In the journal, the doctor reads that dragons need to expel this accumulated energy periodically, as Ringo coldly orders his pet to attack. The villain lets out a desperate scream of panic upon seeing that extinct legend right in front of him, about to incinerate the whole place. A gigantic column of sacred flames consumes the entire woods, lighting up the dark night in a true, overwhelming hell of fire. The vice president screams in agonizing pain as he takes a direct hit from the destructive breath of the draconic beast, unable to resist that heat. The echo of the attacker's desperate screams spreads across the entire school region as the flames finally begin to settle down. The small dragon lands calmly on Ringo's shoulder, looking much calmer and healthier after expelling all the excess heat from its body. Lying on the burnt grass, the villain begs for mercy, swearing on his knees that he will keep Ringo's secret forever if he is spared. But the MC coldly reminds him that only the dead can keep secrets for real, and that school security would come after them either way. With a dark gaze, he warns that if security tries to confiscate the dragon, he will simply turn all the officers into dead men too. The next day, the routine returns to normal at school, but Dr. Fan Fan keeps frantically searching for the hooded boy in the medical area. Ringo silently appears behind her and calls out calmly, revealing he survived that turbulent night without a single scratch. The doctor excitedly explains she discovered the reason behind the pet's high fever, clarifying that bizarre heat is part of its development. The young man smiles and shows that the baby dragon is already healed, cute snoring inside his backpack after the intense energy-burning process. Fan Fan cries out of relief and joyfully celebrates seeing that the legendary creature is safe and sound and no longer in life-threatening danger. She drops to her knees, thanking the heavens, while Ringo watches her affectionately, grateful for the valuable help she gave his hatchling. He removes his disguise and surprises the doctor by offering to hire her as his exclusive private doctor to care for his small dragon. Modest and shy, the young woman declines, saying she is just an ordinary doctor without prestige, incapable of treating a mythological beast like that. Ringo stares at her with a gentle smile and asserts with certainty that she is the most dedicated and loyal professional he has ever had the pleasure of meeting. Overcome with emotion, she hands over the secret journal she found in the library, mentioning a mysterious white-haired girl dropped it while running off. He takes the notebook and is amazed to discover the material is actually a complete handwritten manual on how to raise and train dragons. Ringo stares at the cover of the notebook in silence, aware that this mysterious find will make his journey ahead much easier. Meanwhile, in the courtyard, Mu Ye is brutally defeated by the president's black beast in a violent clash. Lying down and bleeding heavily, the white-haired young man insists on demanding back his beloved pet that was stolen by the villain's faction. Kong Wei yawns, bored with the pleas, and coldly orders his beast to devour the opponent once and for all to end the nuisance. The black beast charges forward, roaring fiercely, ready to tear apart poor Mu Ye, who watches everything without the strength to escape. But drunk Jiao Da shows up out of nowhere holding a beer bottle, asking the president to spare the boy's life out of respect for him. Knowing the imminent danger, the doctor warns that the dragon is growing very fast and decides to guide her friends to a new, isolated hideout. Garfield celebrates with joy as the three walk together toward an abandoned, completely secure area of that massive school. The group's new secret home is an old, decommissioned campus surrounded by overgrown weeds, ideal for keeping the hatchlings safe from curious eyes. With shelter secured, Ringo knows the calm is temporary, as the president's entire faction has already begun hunting down his trail across the school. Garfield suggests Ringo simply drop out of school altogether to raise the baby dragon far away, and then come back later to take everyone down. Ringo turns down the idea because the school has support departments to treat the baby dragon if it gets sick, plus the outside world is way more dangerous. But Ringo's main reason for wanting to stay at the school is that the main enemy leader is still hiding out there. He also explains that both of them need real battles to evolve, and that decommissioned campus is the perfect hideout since it is so isolated from everything. Upon opening one of the windows of the new hideout, Ringo almost chokes to death on all the built-up dust, wondering how long it had been since anyone set foot in there. With a smile on his face, the MC announces it is going to be a heavy cleaning day and calls on his tiny partner to help with the chores. Except instead of helping, the red baby dragon starts jumping for joy and knocking over all the old desks, turning the place into an absolute disaster zone. Ringo just laughs at his pet's mess and decides to start cleaning, grabbing a mop to leave the floor sparkling. The MC pushes the mop at top speed, while the baby dragon hitches a super fun ride on top of the cleaning gear. He watches the hatchling struggle to push heavy furniture around and is impressed by the absurd strength of that tiny, mystical creature. In the end, the duo celebrates their cleaning success, complete with confetti and a champion pose on top of one of the desks they just organized. Garfield and Dr. Fan arrive right after, carrying several bags of food while asking how their big cleaning spree turned out. But both stand completely shocked and speechless upon seeing that the supposed cleaning actually left the room even messier than before. Ringo nervously asks if they were followed, but Garfield guarantees with absolute certainty that she is the undisputed queen of disguises and stealth. With everyone helping out, the place finally turns out spotless, with all the desks neatly organized for the group's well-deserved rest. On the chalkboard, they write down that cleaning was successfully completed and that it is officially time to celebrate with a grand feast. Garfield proudly presents a massive meat feast that she prepared all by herself for the first time in her life, swearing she is the undisputed queen of cooking. Except it took just one single bite for everyone to realize the food tasted completely dreadful and unpalatable. The cat girl starts crying, complaining that she spent the whole afternoon cooking, while the doctor desperately begs for there never to be a next time. Not wanting to hurt his friend's feelings, Ringo decides to eat another piece and lies right to her face, saying the meat actually has a pretty interesting sweet aftertaste. Garfield falls for the lie instantly and gets super hyped, her eyes sparkling as she thinks she really is a brilliant top-tier chef. She bites her own food and complains that it tastes awful, but Ringo quickly makes up that the secret is chewing the piece exactly 49 times. She says she will eat it all herself so he does not have to suffer, but Ringo and the baby dragon keep eating for real to support their friend's effort. Seeing that sweet scene, Dr. Fan and her corgi start wondering if the two are just trying to show off their romance right in front of everyone. Meanwhile, in Ringo's dorm, a student runs desperately to report an urgent discovery to the president of that scary study group. The guy reports weeping that Vice President Dai Shu disappeared without a trace, and that Ringo has also been missing from classes for about 2 weeks. The youngster cries inconsolably, remembering that the darn MC was responsible for taking away the woman he loved most in his whole life. He swears that now the culprit has also taken away the man he trusted most, so he needs to seek revenge in the name of his true love. The guy then begs on his knees for terrifying Professor Bao Bao to give him permission to hunt down Ringo and complete his personal revenge. The mysterious Professor Bao Bao tunes out the boy's drama a bit and keeps calmly drawing various bizarre creatures in a notebook. The professor asks if that student really is hiding a hybrid beast, and the guy confirms, mentioning that Dai Shu himself revealed it before vanishing. With an extremely bizarre and creepy smile on his face, Professor Bao Bao orders them to give it their all to find that mystical beast's whereabouts. The guy wipes his tears with determination and swears absolute obedience to the master, promising he will not fail this hunt no matter what. His eyes glowing red, he guarantees he will turn the entire school upside down, along with his massive caged pet rat. Back at the old campus, Ringo takes advantage of his free time to play fetch with the little baby dragon, who happily runs after the toy. Reading the mysterious manual, Ringo discovers the dragon should start flying in 2 months, but realizes they are definitely going to need a professional tamer. The MC smiles with excitement as he imagines his tiny mystical companion flying high through the skies in the very near future. He whispers to himself that he is super eager to see the beast grow and follow every step of this fantastic evolution. But the peaceful moment is cut short by a terrified cry from the baby dragon, making Ringo look back with wide, worried eyes. Without wasting a single second, our hero starts running frantically toward the woods, shouting out his little partner's name. Upon arriving at the spot, he comes face to face with a gigantic black rat with glowing red eyes that is cornering the poor, scared baby dragon. As soon as it senses Ringo's intimidating presence nearby, the giant rodent turns around and flees at full speed through the grass. With a quick, precise energy blast, the MC strikes the giant rat's head, eliminating the threat in the blink of an eye. Observing the rodent's corpse laid out on the ground, Ringo comments in surprise on the bizarre size of that creature, which looked like a mutant monster. But immediately after, the MC's look turns serious as he realizes the presence of that giant rodent there is no mere coincidence. Meanwhile, in another part of the school, students begin to panic upon noticing a bizarre infestation of gigantic rats throughout the hallways. Some students notice the rodent's behavior is way too strange and suspect that all the rats are being controlled by someone. 2 girls in the dorm panic upon seeing rats at the window and suspect the feared study group is behind the recent disappearances at the school. Sensing the tension in the air, determined Mu Ye shows up with his face covered in bandages and focuses his attention on the strange noises echoing through the night. Holding his leather whip, Mu Ye walks through the darkness and finally finds his drunk uncle strolling casually across the campus courtyard. Jiao Da takes another swig of his drink and asks with disdain where his nephew thinks he is going after he swallowed his pride to save him last time. The old man throws it in his face that he adopted the boy to give him a decent life, not to watch him seek his own death in such a stupid way every time he gets into a fight. Mu Ye shouts with determination that he has to go no matter what, because his main goal in life right now is to bring his beloved companion back home. The former tamer spits in anger, while yelling back that the beast his nephew wants to rescue so badly is nothing more than a plain, basic pet. But the young man fires back instantly, saying the creature is not just any random animal, but rather the very first beast he ever managed to tame in his entire life. Out of patience, the man smashes his glass bottle on the ground and warns he will break his nephew's legs right there for his own good and in the name of his late parents. Mu Ye grinds his teeth, feeling the pain from his recent battle wounds, trying to mentally prepare to face his own uncle in the middle of the dark courtyard. Jiao Da puts on a terrifying face and asks with a smirk if the youngster still remembers the painful feeling of getting a proper beating back in the day. But the old man's whole intimidating, scary aura simply vanishes when he lets out a bizarre drunk hiccup in the middle of his tough guy speech. The man drops flat on his back on the ground, completely passed out from being so wasted, leaving poor Mu Ye standing there looking dumb, completely baffled. The young man puts on a priceless look of total shock, staring at his fallen uncle, realizing the grand dramatic showdown actually ended in a ridiculous way. Jiao Da begins snoring deeply on the cold ground, while his nephew just shakes his head, complaining about that drunk old man who is useless for everything. Meanwhile, at the old campus, night falls, bringing terrible news that makes someone burst into the place, screaming the MC's name in despair. Garfield shows up holding the baby dragon and explains that since Ringo stopped going to class, she became last in the ranking and decided to ditch class to live there too. Ringo crosses his arms, looking unamused, and denies the request right away, warning that the hideout could turn into a battlefield at any moment. Completely ignoring the MC's serious warning, Garfield crawls under the covers with the baby dragon and starts reading a dramatic romance web novel. Ringo angrily complains that it is only 7 in the evening and demands his blanket back, while Dr. Fan Fan watches that childish argument in the middle of the hallway. The two start rolling around on the bed, fighting like kids over space and the blanket, while the little red baby dragon seems to find the whole situation hilarious. Watching that whole mess, Dr. Fan Fan adjusts her glasses and lets out a subtle smirk, finding the intimacy they share super cute. Ringo and Garfield freeze at the exact same time and stare at each other up close, realizing the extremely embarrassing position they ended up in during the fight. The doctor discreetly turns around to leave, mentioning she will be back in 10 minutes to give some privacy to the two lovebirds, who try to explain themselves bright red. After sitting down to have some tea, the doctor jokes that it is great to be young and that she understands everything, but the duo screams annoyed, swearing she got it all wrong. Fan Fan decides to give a bizarre scientific lecture, explaining that the act of mating can greatly help the beast's transformation process and personal cultivation. She whips out a giant professional camera and asks if she can film their experiments as research material, leaving Ringo even more furious and outraged. As the crazy talk continues inside, the summer night seems to get longer and livelier for that group of friends gathered at the abandoned campus. The MC loses his patience for good and screams at the two to stop talking nonsense and get back to their own rooms immediately. Later on, everyone ends up falling asleep right there on the bedroom floor, complete with Garfield sprawled out comfortably right next to our poor, space-deprived hero. Ringo wakes up in the middle of the night extremely exhausted, realizing that taking care of that bunch of freeloaders will be way more work than he originally thought. Suddenly, strange rodent sounds echo through the wires and grass outside the dorm room, completely shattering the quiet of that dark early morning. With his beast senses extremely sharpened, the MC opens his red eyes in the dark and goes on high alert as he senses danger outside. He sits up quickly on his makeshift bed, observing the silence of the room while the girls and the little dog keep sleeping deeply, completely unaware. Looking to the side, Ringo realizes in panic that Garfield's mattress is completely empty and lets out a frantic shout calling his friend's name. Oblivious to all the danger, the cat girl walks sleepily through the dark, empty hallways of the old building, letting out a super lazy yawn. She rubs the hem of her shirt, muttering under her breath that she drank way too much water before bed and had to get up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom anyway. But as she walks down the stairs, quick footsteps and sinister rodent squeaks begin echoing right behind her, making the atmosphere very tense. Garfield stops in the middle of the deserted hallway, trying to identify where that bizarre noise, which seems to be getting closer, faster and faster, is coming from. Ringo comes running frantically out of one of the hallway rooms and screams at the top of his lungs for his companion to watch out for what is right behind her. The cat girl turns around, startled by the sudden yelling, and looks confused at the MC, who keeps sprinting toward her at top speed. It is at that exact moment that one of those giant black rats with glowing red eyes emerges from the ceiling, pouncing fiercely toward the unprotected duo. Garfield thinks Ringo is scared of a simple, silly mouse, but her mockery does not last long as she notices a literal tsunami of rats coming right behind it. Hundreds of bizarre, hungry rodents sprout from every imaginable corner of the walls and ceiling, completely surrounding the two friends in the hallway. The sheer weight and absurd quantity of rodent monsters is so massive that even the concrete walls of the old campus start cracking under their pressure. The terrifying red-eyed student watches everything from hiding, mentally ordering his beasts to attack the selected targets without any mercy. A literal torrential rain of monstrous rats falls on top of the duo, who try to huddle together to avoid contact with that gross black mass. The desperate screams of the two friends echo throughout the abandoned campus as the sea of rodents completely consumes the place in a terrifying scene. Ringo tries to shove the little creatures away with his hands, grossed out to death while cursing whoever was responsible for that bizarre infestation of filthy pests in the hideout. Garfield lets out a loud, frantic scream of terror upon seeing the gross rodents literally crawling all over her body and almost entering her mouth. The MC complains in disbelief, reminding her that she is a cat girl and should be hunting those rats instead of screaming like crazy. In the middle of all that grossness, Ringo realizes he needs to save his tiny pet and runs frantically back to the room before it is too late. To everyone's shock and panic, the poor little red dragon is being dragged by its tail by a giant rat, carried away along with the noisy horde. Ringo yells with all his force to the baby dragon, reminding the hatchling that he is already perfectly capable of flying to get rid of those rats. Pushed by the imminent danger, the small reptile finally opens its mystical wings, showing that survival instinct spoke much louder. The little dragon lets out a fire burp right in the middle of the rodent horde that was trying to drag it down at all costs. Panic continues in the campus hallway, with Garfield screaming frantically that the amount of rats is absurd and makes any chance of escape impossible. The small dragon lands on the ground, looking exhausted and surrounded by threatening squeaks after using up all its energy on the recent flame attack. Ringo bites his own fingers, wondering if he should use a secret forbidden technique, but decides against it, knowing that move can only be activated a single time. He then yells to his pet not to be spoiled or scared of the situation, since the enemy in front of them is nothing more than a bunch of gross rats. The hero hype up the hatchling, reminding him that his draconic claws are way sharper and his teeth are far more dangerous than those of the rodents. Ringo sets the record straight once and for all, yelling with pride that his tiny companion is actually the supreme sovereign and true lord of all beasts. Inspired by his master's encouraging words, the baby dragon lets out an insanely loud roar that echoes through the whole dark hallway. The shockwave of the draconic roar spreads like a devastating explosion, blasting away that whole mountain of frightened rodents. Even Ringo and Garfield step back in surprise at the reptile's hidden power, as the rats start trembling before the beast's imposing presence. Taking advantage of the rat swarm starting to scatter out of fear, the MC grabs his friend by the hand to try and escape from there as fast as possible. Ringo scoops up his exhausted baby dragon in his arms, praising his good work, while Garfield points out a new problem popping up. The truce lasts a very short time, and the bizarre rodents start grouping up again in the dark, determined not to let the intruders escape. Ringo quickly assesses the situation and suggests they climb through the hole opened in the ceiling to try and seek safe shelter on the building's third floor. Safe on the upper floor, Garfield collapses onto the ground, huffing from exhaustion, swearing she will take 100 showers in a row to wash all that grossness off her body. But the brief moment of peace ends when the cat girl opens her eyes wide in panic, remembering they ended up forgetting poor Dr. Fan. The two rush to look down through the ceiling hole, shouting for the doctor while hearing several desperate screams coming straight from the middle of that sea of rats. Down below, a trembling hand appears, holding on for dear life to the ceiling fan blade while answering that she is still alive by a thread. Hanging dramatically from the fan with her corgi on her head, the doctor yells out that she is about to plunge right into the middle of that pile of rats. Garfield starts praying for the doctor's soul, saying she was a good person, while Ringo complains indignantly about his friend's premature acceptance. Ringo tells the cat girl to use her feline speed to escape from there and get help from outside, while he takes responsibility for saving the doctor. The MC's look turns extremely grim, and he swears he will take the opportunity to wipe out the threat of the study group once and for all. He warns her not to call the school's regular security unit, but rather go straight to the Supreme Council to ensure proper action is taken. Garfield activates her wild cat instincts and yells for the baby dragon to watch closely as she shows off her skill and agility. With fast, precise moves, the cat girl leaps through the building window straight onto the tree branches, starting her escape at top speed through the forest. Ringo feels relieved knowing his friend is not the faction's main target, so she will be completely safe as soon as she crosses the campus borders. Tucking his tiny pet back inside his jacket, the hero praises the baby dragon's performance and tells him to rest, because now he will handle everything himself. Thinking strategically, Ringo calculates how he will climb down to the second floor, overrun with rats to rescue the doctor without getting cornered in the process. The hero sprints down the dark hallways of the old campus's third floor, looking for the best access point to begin his descent. But his plans are interrupted when the stairway floor violently explodes, blasting concrete pieces and dust everywhere. Out of the hole emerges the president's colossal black canine beast, leaping fiercely with open jaws right at our hero. Ringo shows insane reflexes and manages to dodge the deadly strike, sliding under the monster's huge furry body as it passes right over him. He recovers quickly from the dodge, but realizes with concern that the black dog's massive size completely blocked the hallway passage. The giant watchdog drools hungrily while glaring at the MC with glowing eyes, ready to launch a violent hunt inside that tight space. The monster charges into attack, running at top speed toward Ringo, destroying everything in its path with its terrifying raw strength. But instead of panicking, the MC smirks, revealing he just came up with a brilliant strategy to use the beast to his own advantage. Ringo leaps toward the ceiling hole, making the canine beast take the bait and jump right after him in a desperate attempt to snap him up. He uses the monster's own weight to break the floor already weakened by the rats, ironically thanking the giant dog for the valuable help heading down. The two plunge together through the destroyed structure as the MC celebrates that the creature's attack happened at the most perfect moment possible. The impact of the canine beast's fall is so devastating that they crash through the second-floor ceiling, dropping straight onto the first floor in a shower of debris. Ringo uses the giant dog's body as a crash pad, nimbly jumping off at the last second while the monster smashes heavily against the hard floor. The horde of rodents that was pursuing the doctor instantly shifts focus and starts surrounding the giant dog, leaving Ringo's path totally clear. The massive black dog starts getting attacked and bitten by thousands of hungry rats, letting out whines of pain as it finds itself turned into the pest's feast. The doctor whimpers, warning that her hand ended up stuck in the fan blade, but Ringo pops up at the window, calmly announcing that rescue has arrived. The study group president Kong Wei emerges from the shadows, watching his watchdog's failure with an expression of absolute hatred stamped on his face. The villain walks slowly down the dark hallway of the floor above, glaring at the MC down below, and asks with contempt what the boy thinks he is doing. Despite the bites, the black beast furiously stands back up beside the rodents, a bloodthirsty look in its eyes, ready to shred Ringo at any second. Suddenly, a frantic cry for his uncle echoes through the place, revealing that Mu Ye finally managed to reach the building to help amidst all that chaos. Leather whip in hand, the white-haired young man enters the dark hallway, shouting for his drunk uncle to wake up from that ridiculous sleep once and for all. Ringo looks back pretty confused upon recognizing the meat seller, or rather, the guy in charge of the school's logistics department who showed up out of nowhere. The MC starts finding it funny and comments to himself about the massive number of bizarre characters who decided to pop up at the same time in that place. Seeing all that mess, Ringo sarcastically remarks that it might be way safer for Dr. Fan to stay hanging from the ceiling fan a bit longer. It is at this point that we are taken to a flashback of the past, showing young Mu Ye all bruised up and crying after getting involved in a violent street fight. Uncle Zhao Da appears in the past, trying to downplay the situation, saying kids fighting is normal, while the other parent yells angrily upon seeing his injured son. The former tamer clasps his hands, begging for sincere forgiveness, explaining the boy grew up without a mother, pleading for mercy and forgiveness from everyone present. But young Mu Ye shouts rebelliously, revealing the other boy insulted his family, calling his late parents low-class animals. Suddenly, a massive, monstrous black shadow full of glowing eyes emerges behind them, leaving the boy's uncle completely frozen in terror. To prevent the worst, Jiao Da violently slaps his own nephew, pretending to be furious at the boy's behavior in front of that faction's feared leader. The man humbles himself on his knees, begging for forgiveness, while young Mu Ye watches that sad scene without understanding why his uncle is bowing so low. The creature's black goo wraps around the little boy's face as a dark voice whispers that this place was made exclusively for the beast folk elite. The creature says ordinary humans unable to transform are only fit to be slaves, being no different from the stray dogs and cats thrown around corners. The monster orders them to throw the white-haired boy into a dog cage, so he finally learns his true place in the school hierarchy. Locked behind the bars of a dark cage, young Mu Ye cries and screams desperately, asking to get out of that humiliating, terrifying confinement. The scene zooms out, revealing the vastness of the place's darkness, as his screams echo helplessly through every corner of that creepy, abandoned warehouse. In the middle of all that darkness, hundreds of tiny, glowing red eyes start glaring at the poor, locked-up boy in a very threatening way. Sweat dripping down his face, the boy slowly turns around, terrified of what might be hiding in there with him inside that lightless room. But to his surprise, he comes face to face with just a pack of abandoned, dirty puppies that seem to share the same pain and loneliness he felt. A tiny, super cute black puppy approaches the bars holding a green bone toy in its mouth and barks amicably to try to comfort the boy. The hatchling drops the toy on the floor, showing genuine empathy that touches young Mu Ye, creating a bond of true friendship between the two right there. The black puppy lets out another cute bark and fixes its bright little eyes on the youngster, seeming to promise they would overcome that tough phase together. Firmly holding the small green bone toy, the present-day young man swears he will prove everyone's worth against the arrogance of those monsters. Mu Ye asserts with conviction that even if they are unable to transform into powerful beasts, they still possess human dignity that no one can ever take away. The memory of the cute black puppy shines in the young man's mind, serving as the perfect fuel of determination for the battle about to unfold now. And that same cute little creature from the past has now transformed into the gigantic black watchdog that roars imposing, protecting his beloved master in the courtyard. With a synchronized jump filled with mystical yellow energy, the young man and his massive canine companion charge forward, determined to tear down every barrier. President Kong Wei watches the opponent's advance with disdain and mockingly asks what the white-haired boy really thinks he can accomplish. In the past, young Kong Wei spotted Mu Ye's black dog and arrogantly, pettily decided he was going to steal the pet for himself. Back then, Uncle Jiao Da had to physically hold the little boy back amidst a bright light to stop him from doing something crazy upon having his companion stolen. Kong Wei used green paint to draw a bone on the black puppy's forehead, laughing cruelly and sadistically at the situation. He painted colorful bones on all the captured dogs and proposed a macabre game to see which one would devour the other's bones first. Facing the giant jaws of the black dog, the white-haired young man relives all the painful memories of his turbulent past of suffering. The massive black dog attacks with full fury, tearing up the floor with its claws, creating a huge explosion of dust and debris across the whole area. Amidst all that dust and destruction, Ringo takes advantage of the chaos to rescue Dr. Fan, quickly carrying her away from danger. Mu Ye runs alongside the hero and warns that in this bizarre school where even murders get covered up, nobody beats enemies with just small talk. Ringo fires back that strong fists and sharp teeth are basic survival requirements as they face the faction leader blocking their path. The hero confidently reveals he already discovered Kong Wei's weakness, explaining that the study group relies way too much on the raw power of beast transformation. With a wicked smile on his face, Kong Wei calls Ringo a cocky brat and announces he is officially kicked out of the study group from here on. Ringo asks who the real instructor behind the illegal supplement schemes is, but the president arrogantly asks if the boy thinks he has the right to know. The MC glares at his opponent seriously and concludes that the easiest way to get answers is to beat the villain up until he begs to talk. He bites his own finger, preparing to release his hidden draconic power, challenging the enemy leader to bring everything he's got for the final showdown. The young man knows the baby dragon's growth affects his own skills, remembering when the hatchling had a fever and spitfire in the woods. On that occasion, Ringo's body also absorbed the accumulated mystical energy, though that massive power of flames could only be unleashed a single time. Even so, that temporary energy is more than enough to handle the current situation as he prepares to summon the terrifying storm. Ringo and Muye watch in surprise as several glowing red marks and sinister cracks start sprouting across all the hallway walls and windows. Sharp red spikes explode from the walls, leaving the MC and his companions completely shocked by the speed of that surprise attack. The cutting projectiles fly in all directions, spreading blood and destruction through the air as someone frantically screams for everyone to watch out. Showing absurd heroism, Ringo throws himself in front of Mu Ye, absorbing the full impact of the cutting spikes into his own body to save his ally. 5 minutes before all that massive chaos, Swift Garfield was running and jumping through the dark woods tree branches, trying to find the Supreme Council. She spots a mysterious figure in the forest and screams out that something terrible is happening at the decommissioned campus, begging them to call the council. The figure turns out to be Professor Bao Bao, who replies with a calm smile, confirming he was actually on his way to that abandoned building. But the cat girl locks eyes with his and feels a terrible chill, realizing the professor's pupils are extremely bizarre and monstrous. Back in the present, the sinister sound of buzzing insects begins taking over the entire hallway of the old building, making the atmosphere even tenser. Bao Bao recalls watching Ringo and concludes the boy really is hiding a rare hybrid beast inside that mysterious backpack. The terrifying professor reveals that his terrible poisonous spike storm technique is actually his most powerful, lethal move. The pointed spikes fly at high speed, invading the old building's windows, relentlessly destroying everything in their path. Ringo coughs with difficulty, feeling the severe impact of dozens of stingers embedded in his back while trying to protect his ally with his own body. Kong Wei joyfully celebrates seeing his instructor Bao Bao arrive, thanking him for the divine intervention that saved the whole study group right there. The faction president's eyes sparkle with joy upon verifying that his master decided to act personally to resolve that situation. Floating on massive bee wings, Professor Bao Bao mocks Ringo's sacrifice, sarcastically commenting that it is very touching to see young people die for their friends. The bug man hovers near the destroyed window and demands to know if the mystical beast they are hunting so badly is indeed hidden inside that bag. Ringo questions why an educator is supporting that group's illegal criminal activities without fear of facing a strict investigation from the school. The villain laughs, calling the boy naive, and explains that the goal of that renowned academy is to make students cast off their human form to return to the essence of beasts. He claims the administration does not care about the death of the weak, since society usually only praises the majestic glory and raw power of great lions. Ringo listens to the dark speech in silence while feeling terrible pain caused by the dangerous pointed spikes still stuck in his back. The professor teaches that to reach the top of the world, the strong must devour the weak, absorbing the rabbit's cleverness and the fox's agility into their essence. He swears that consuming others' vital energy is the only true path to understanding the universe's deepest secrets, and that it was precisely through this absorption method that legendary creatures of mythology, like the feared three-headed dog, came to exist in the world. He cites mythical monsters and even the legendary Cthulhu as perfect, beautiful examples of evolution achieved through this dark biological process. Bao Bao laughs hysterically, stating he has personally seen the being that dwells at the apex of absolute chaos, and that it represents the ultimate truth of the entire universe. The memory shows a colossal, giant, worm-like creature emerging from a red ocean of blood before a crowd of kneeling followers. The bee professor closes his eyes and opens his arms, feeling extremely proud and fulfilled with his own twisted life philosophy. He mentions he has nothing personal against Ringo, but states the MC is far too weak and insignificant to deserve control over a mystical creature. The villain tells him to hand over the hatchling in exchange for a quick, painless death. But our hero tells the professor to eat trash and flat out calls him useless trash. With a sadistic smile, Bao Bao warns he has many painful methods to punish rebellious students, reminding him that his stinger's venom is extremely deadly. The professor guarantees the hero is as good as dead, as terrible purple marks caused by toxins rapidly spread across the MC's skin. Feeling the neurotoxin's devastating effect, Ringo grinds his teeth in pain, complaining that insect-type transformation users are the most annoying of all. Coughing heavily, the MC realizes he has no other alternative and decides to activate his forbidden flame strike before finally succumbing to the poison. He releases all the accumulated mystical energy and wraps himself in an overwhelming aura of draconic flames that begins consuming his whole body in the middle of the hallway. Outside, Mu Ye watches that transformation in total shock and yells desperately upon seeing his ally suddenly catch fire. Hanging from the ceiling fan, Dr. Fan analyzes the situation and realizes with relief that the flame's extreme heat managed to burn away all the poison in Ringo's body. Sensing the drastic turn in the battle, the study group president angrily shouts, ordering his giant black dog to shred the guy in the hoodie right now. The massive animal roars furiously and prepares to deliver a lethal blow against Ringo, driven by the direct mental order it just received from its master. But the MC shows incredible strength and blocks the giant dog's bite, holding the creature's jaws with his flaming draconic claws. With his arms completely wrapped in bright flames, Ringo manages to hold the monster's mouth open, stopping its sharp teeth from piercing him. Activating his ultimate fire form, the hero apologizes to the animal, knowing the poor black dog is just another innocent victim of mind control. With a quick motion, Ringo hurls the giant dog aside into the wall, but coughs in pain as he senses his physical body is also reaching its limit. He realizes the draconic flames multiplied his physical strength dozens of times over, but knows his body will only be able to maintain this state for a few seconds. The MC temporarily knocks out the black dog, slamming it onto the floor, while the president and the B professor watch him with looks of pure hatred. With a mental countdown of just 45 seconds left, Ringo yells for his logistics classmate to step up and handle his own problems. The white-haired young man yells back, confirming he got it, and charges into attack, wielding his leather whip against the faction president. Without wasting a single millisecond, our hero leaps at top speed toward Professor Bao Bao, unleashing an overwhelming fire punch. On the other side, Kong Wei angrily points his finger and orders the remaining horde of giant rats to advance and grind up the logistics classmate without any mercy. Mu Ye demonstrates incredible combat skill, spinning his whip to slice through the bizarre monsters trying to jump on him from all sides. Hanging from the ceiling, the doctor yells out, explaining that the secret to the villain's mind control is fear, and tells Mu Ye to attack Kong Wei's weak body to free the dog. The white-haired young man lands more strikes on the rodents and asks back how on earth he is supposed to break the enemy's concentration with so many rats attacking. Kong Wei starts kicking his own fallen giant dog, aggressively demanding the beast wake up right now to get back in the fight and protect him from danger. Seeing the villain distracted kicking the dog, Mu Ye takes advantage of the opening to spin his whip, generating a barrier that sweeps away all the rats around the dark courtyard. On the other side, angry Kong Wei pulls out a mind control needle to try and force his giant dog to regain its senses and obey orders. He shoves the needle mercilessly into the canine beast's back, yelling for it to wake up and go back to attacking the intruders who are destroying everything. Mu Ye screams in despair for the president to stop that cruel torture against the helpless animal, which is already suffering way too much in that fight. The white-haired young man takes a spectacular leap, delivering a whip strike while calling the villain every bad name in the book right in the middle of the dark courtyard. But the needle worked, and the gigantic black dog leaps violently onto its former master, claws and teeth fully bared. The massive monster shoves Mu Ye with full force against the building wall, making the young man shatter windows from the violent impact of the attack. Mu Ye screams in pain as he gets brutally bitten on the shoulder by the creature he raised with so much love, ever since it was just a tiny puppy. The president laughs sadistically and asks how it feels to be devoured to death by the very pet the young man raised since it was little. He keeps cackling like an unhinged lunatic while mentally ordering the dog to finish the job and rip the opponent's head off. The black dog drools terrifyingly, preparing to tear open the young man's neck while blood drips down poor Muye's injured body. Meanwhile, in the second-floor room, the ceiling fan blade starts spinning wildly, leaving Dr. Fan Fan hanging in total panic. She and her corgi start going around at top speed in the air, screaming for help before the equipment breaks and the two fall down below. The fabric holding the two to the fan blade finally rips once and for all, initiating a terrifying free fall for the duo. The doctor and the little corgi are hurled forcefully through the air, screaming in full panic as they plunge toward the open hole in the floor. By pure stroke of fate, the doctor drops headfirst right on top of Kong Wei, knocking the villain out in spectacular fashion with a perfect accidental strike. To top off the humiliation, little corgi Ruby lands right on the scared president's face, covering the guy's face in drool and gross dirt. The doctor gets up dizzy and confused from the fall, unable to understand how she managed to survive and still knock out the study group leader at the same time. Sensing the mental control link was finally broken, the massive black dog stops biting Mu Ye and looks back, completely confused. Kong Wei gets up enraged with hatred, grabs the little corgi, and throws him to the ground with violence, screaming that he will kill that filthy dog. The villain starts unleashing several cruel kicks on the poor, helpless dog, venting all his built-up frustration and anger on the creature. Seeing her beloved four-legged companion mistreated like that, Fan Fan lets out a desperate scream, begging the attacker to stop. But the MC reemerges from the shadows, demanding the villain's attention back, and throws the green bone toy straight in Kong Wei's direction. The green object whizzes right past the president's face, making his eyes widen as he realizes that little toy represents his end. Mu Ye takes advantage of the opportunity to order his canine companion to play fetch with the toy just launched by the MC. A quick memory of the past shows the cute black puppy running happily to snap up its favorite green bone as fast as possible. But in the present, the gigantic black dog takes a terrifying leap, snapping up the mystical toy that was flying right behind the president's head. In the process of grabbing the bone, the massive animal runs right over the villain, trampling Kong Wei with full force and breaking the guy's bones from the impact. Mu Ye breathes a sigh of relief, exhausted, seeing that his rescue plan worked perfectly and his beloved companion finally regained consciousness. The faction president lies sprawled on the ground, completely defeated and bloody, paying the price for all the evil he committed against others. Meanwhile, little corgi Ruby lies on the ground badly hurt, whimpering in pain after suffering the villain's terrible cowardly attacks. Dr. Fan Fan runs over in tears to scoop her injured dog into her arms, while Mu Ye watches the scene with his massive companion by his side. Far away outside the building, the deadly battle between Ringo and the terrifying bee professor continues, generating intense explosions in the night. The hero focuses his attention on his flaming claws, aware that his draconic firepower time is running out with every passing second. The Bugman cackles uncontrollably, trying to guess what type of fire beast the boy controls, citing several known rare species. A new torrential storm of poisonous spikes is fired by the villain, but Ringo displays insane reflexes, dodging every single one in midair. He slides across the grass at top speed, using the bushes as temporary cover to try to close the distance against his annoying opponent. With a spectacular acrobatic leap, the MC manages to bypass Bao Bao's defense, surprisingly popping up right behind the villain's back. Ringo prepares a right hook with his fist completely wrapped in intense flames, ready to unleash all his mystical fury on the enemy. But the experienced bee professor displays fast combat reflexes, using his massive rear stinger to block Ringo's lethal strike in midair. The two exchange violent strikes, generating a massive wave of bright sparks that lights up the woods while both struggle to keep their balance in midair. Ringo gets pushed back by the force of the impact, but manages to land on his feet in the forest, focused on continuing the deadly fight no matter what. Suddenly, one of the study group's remaining henchmen runs out of the woods, yelling that he will help his master finish off the MC. But showing zero mercy, the cruel professor pierces his own henchman's chest with his stinger, yelling that he does not need help from any weakling. The unfortunate henchman coughs blood, eyes wide with pain, feeling deadly toxins invade his body without understanding why he was betrayed like that. With a despicable spinning motion, the Bugman hurls his ally's lifeless body into the forest, proving he really does not care about anyone. Ringo gathers his last strength, expanding his draconic flame aura to the max to deliver the decisive blow of that life-or-death battle. Professor Bao Bao dives from above at top speed, pointing his sharpest poisonous stinger straight at our brave MC's chest. Under the full moon's light, Ringo takes a spectacular leap off the cliff, flying straight into the villain's attack in a moment of pure tension and adrenaline in the woods. The two exchange mid-air blows at impressive speed, where every inch of dodging means the difference between survival and certain death. Ringo manages to grab the bee professor's terrible poisonous stinger with his own fire hands, demonstrating an unshakable willpower at the end. Ringo spins Professor Bao Bao's body in the air like a sack of potatoes, unleashing all the remaining energy of his flames before time runs out. He slams the villain toward the forest ground, generating a brutal impact and a massive dust screen that spreads through the trees. The bee professor falls completely sprawled in the middle of a deep smoking crater, totally knocked out and without strength to react. Our hero lands from above with pure force, digging his foot straight into the opponent's chest to ensure he does not try any funny business. Ringo extends his firearm and firmly holds the professor's disgusting mouth stinger, threatening to rip the piece off with his extreme strength. The fire mode timer rapidly runs down to absolute zero, finally ending the MC's ultimate transformation state for good. Out of breath and exhausted, the guy in the hoodie deactivates his firepower and stares at the fallen professor, who now looks like nothing more than a useless, defeated husk. Sweat drips down the young man's face as he takes a deep breath to try and catch his wind after spending every drop of mystical energy he possessed. Professor Bao Bao laments his defeat, realizing the battle is finally over and that his arrogance was completely shattered by a mere student. Without any ceremony, Ringo forcefully pulls the villain's disgusting insect tongue, making him gag in pain in the middle of the dark forest courtyard. The Bugman starts cackling with difficulty amidst his agony, while the hero observes him from above with a cold, completely relentless gaze. With a quick movement, the defeated professor's body is thrown against the trees, snapping dry branches with the force of the violent impact. Hanging from a branch, the villain laughs, admitting he almost died, and confesses to being extremely curious to find out what kind of mystical beast the boy possesses. The MC worries, realizing the darn insect survived the lethal strike and that his own dragon flames are completely depleted. But he notices his opponent does not know that, and decides to use the professor's unhealthy obsession with rare beasts to cook up a lie and manage to escape. Ringo tries to think fast for a strategic way out while hiding his trembling arm to avoid revealing that he is completely out of strength to continue. The bee professor displays his monstrous, mutated insect claw, saying he has just one last wish before accepting his terrible fate. With a macabre smile on his face, Bao Bao begs to see with his own eyes what kind of brilliant hybrid beast managed to defeat him so humiliatingly. The hero opens his jacket, revealing the baby dragon snoring peacefully, leaving the professor completely starstruck as he gazes at that mythical creature. He holds the small, sleeping reptile carefully, maintaining a stance of superiority so his opponent keeps believing he is in total control. The baby dragon gives a light, sleepy twitch, seeming oblivious to all the danger and confusion happening around it in the dark forest. Ringo glares at the villain with his most intimidating look to ensure the professor does not try any suspicious move against his hatchling. Completely paralyzed, the Bugman whispers in full shock, realizing the boy is actually hiding an extinct legend in his arms. The professor stammers, unable to believe what he is seeing right before his own eyes, asking himself what kind of divine existence that cute little creature is. Reality finally sets in for the villain, and he trembles with excitement upon confirming he is standing before a real, legendary dragon. He recalls that dragons dwell at the absolute apex of all existing beasts, being a far nobler and more powerful deity than the black turtle itself. Bao Bao screams like crazy, realizing he has a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to witness a real baby dragon that was just born a short while ago. On his knees, the man starts crying out of joy, thinking it is wonderful to have been defeated by the divine force of the universe's greatest mystical creature. In a cold, threatening tone of voice, Ringo asks if his opponent has any last words before he decrees the absolute end of that intense fight. The villain extends a trembling hand, begging to touch the sacred animal, promising he will accept his own death with happiness if he can do that. The MC makes a disgusted face, calling the professor a sick pervert, and wonders why on earth he should trust that lunatic's word. The Bugman points to his own bee-tongue, stating that mouth stinger represents his only weak point and his lifeline. He explains he is a parasitic wasp that completely depends on the stinger, saying he agrees to hand it over to submit to the legendary dragon's sovereign will. Ringo wastes no time and firmly grabs the professor's disgusting insect tongue, ensuring he will have full control over that enemy's life. The Bugman lets out an agonizing groan of extreme pain while the MC holds his weak point tightly, keeping his rival under his thumb. The hero coldly analyzes the situation and concludes the professor was not lying, and that destroying that stinger really would cause his immediate death. But right after, the MC makes a disgusted face, realizing holding that slimy insect tongue is one of the most bizarre things he has ever done. Ringo denies the villain's wish and asks suspiciously if the bee professor ended up attacking or hurting the cat girl he ran into along the way. The Bugman denies it, trembling in pain, and explains the young feline was way too weak, so he did not even bother showing interest in her. He reveals he merely used his toxins to put the girl into a deep sleep, as the scene shows the young woman lying curled up on the forest grass. Ringo breathes an immense sigh of relief upon hearing the confirmation, realizing his great friend Garfield is in no life-threatening danger at the moment. The MC firmly orders the defeated professor to guide him immediately to the exact spot where the cat girl is sleeping in the dark forest. While the two walk through the dense woods, the doctor's frantic screams searching for her corgi Ruby keep echoing across the entire forest area. Ringo explains that the whole mess lasted less than 15 minutes, and that Garfield's weakness actually saved her life, since the professor did not view her as a threat. To avoid investigations, the hero spares Professor Baobao, who agrees to use his influence to cover up the deaths and lie to the board about the dragon. With the deal struck strategically, the villain's life is spared, and the story skips ahead 3 days later in the massive school's hallways. Inside the medical clinic, Dr. Fan adjusts her glasses and mentions she was actually waiting for Ringo and his companions to arrive right there. Ringo and his friends enter the room with very worried looks, and the MC immediately asks what the little corgi's true health status is. The poor pet dog appears lying on the surgical table, completely bandaged up, connected to dozens of medical machines just to stay alive. The doctor sadly explains that Ruby needs advanced treatments, but the school would never release funds from the research institute to save an ordinary dog. But to bring some relief to the group, the doctor reassures them with a calm smile that little corgi Ruby is definitely going to pull through. She swears with all the determination in the world that no matter the financial cost or effort required, she will keep her beloved companion alive. The three friends listen to the doctor's outburst in absolute silence, moved by the love and loyalty she shows toward her little dog. The trio of students walks thoughtfully down the massive modern hallways of the school's medical clinic, trying to figure out a solution for the lack of money. Garfield sadly asks if there really is nothing they can do to help pay for Ruby's expensive treatment, while Ringo seems to get an idea. Ringo asks his two friends to lend him all the money they have on hand, promising he will return the full amount to them a bit later. Except the cat girl places just 2 ridiculous tiny coins in the palm of his hand, proving their financial situation is extremely dire. Ringo puts on a deadpan, bummed-out look upon verifying they are all completely broke, without a single red cent to pay the medical bills. Even so, the MC places the tiny coins on the reception counter, asking to apply them to the dog's bill, leaving the receptionist totally speechless at the chump change. He silently laments, knowing that raising a mystical dragon and treating an injured dog are 2 things way too expensive for a bunch of jobless students. Ringo looks at the campus horizon and realizes he will urgently need to find a way to make a ton of money to support everyone. The MC mentions he will need to step away for a few hours, leaving his small baby dragon under his friend Garfield's care and responsibility. He reassures her with a calm smile that his mysterious errand should not take more than an hour to be completely resolved on campus. Holding the cute hatchling in her arms, Garfield asks curiously where her friend is heading in such a hurry in the middle of the day, while Mu-Ye just watches in silence. Ringo steps into a restricted access elevator at the school, keeping absolute mystery about what he plans to do to get the cash they need so badly. The doors open, revealing a dark underground storage room packed with shelves and stacked boxes labeled with "Handle with care" warnings on the sides. The hero walks silently behind a large green curtain, where several silhouettes of people seem to be working in a secret laboratory. A mysterious girl with short black hair and red eyes pulls back the curtain and coldly mentions that the MC finally arrived at the agreed spot. The laboratory scientists begin checking all the young man's vital data, confirming that his blood pressure, heart rate, and temperature are normal. With a calm, focused expression, the MC lies down on the surgical table and asserts with complete certainty that he is finally ready to begin the process. The large surgical lamp is turned on, and the doctors announce they will begin preparations for the dangerous blood transfusion process on the MC. In the operating room, we see Ringo lying next to another patient while his special dragon blood is transferred directly to save the other person's life. Ringo closes his eyes thoughtfully and says to himself that he has gained much more confidence lately and that he will become the strongest warrior in the entire school. The transfusion tubes firmly connect the arms of both patients, while the MC promises his late father that he will honor the family name no matter what it takes. The scene cuts to a gorgeous cabin at the top of a cliff surrounded by mountains and trees, serving as the perfect isolated spot for training sessions. If they get discovered by enemies, they will be able to use the water route to escape, proving that Professor Bao's recommendation really was extremely useful. Garfield praises the professor, saying he is a cool guy, but Ringo instantly fires back, reminding her that the bug man is actually nothing more than a sick pervert. Classmate Mu-Ye observes the new location in awe and comments to the group that the massive school has lands and hideouts that seem endless because they are so huge. As a token of gratitude for having his life saved, Mu-Ye promises to use all his knowledge as a tamer to train our hero's mysterious pet. But when the little red dragon jumps around playfully, spitting tiny sparks of fire, Mu-Ye's eyes widen, and he lets out a yell of full shock upon seeing the creature. He wipes sweat off his face and tries to keep up a tough guy posture, asserting that even if it is a legendary dragon, he will not give any easy treatment during lessons. Dressed in a flashy circus tamer outfit with a top hat, Mu-Ye calls everyone to start training, but Ringo embarrassedly mentions that was unnecessary. Seeing the isolated cabin at the cliff top, the tamer asks if the main goal of training is really to develop the small mystical reptile's ability to fly. The young man explains that young animals refuse to fly due to fatigue, saying the takeoff on the night of the fight was just from stress, now requiring very patient training. Before attempting flight, the tamer advises Ringo to build a simple, basic connection with his hatchling by making the pet respond to his command whistles. The brown-haired hero looks at his friend, quite intrigued, and asks curiously what the exact method to make that technique work would be. The trainer explains that the first step consists of whistling in a very specific rhythm every time he feeds a nice piece of fresh meat to the hatchling. Ringo holds the small red baby dragon up high, and it opens its tiny wings and licks its chops happily, ready to start its delicious training feast. He explains that after repeating the process several times, the creature's brain will associate the sound with food, making it come running even if there is no food available. The next step is to gradually increase the distance of the call, starting at 100 meters and going up to 1 kilometer away to test the pet's hearing. Ringo starts running through the forest, whistling loudly, while the baby dragon hears the call and sprints at top speed through the trees to find its owner. The MC celebrates joyfully upon seeing that the reptile can hear him from very far away, while the tamer shouts, encouraging both to push even further in the test. From the top of the hill, Summoner Garfield yells, annoyed with her hands over her mouth, asking if the two athletes on duty are going to stop running to finally eat lunch. Back to the normal school routine. The exhausted MC ends up falling into a deep sleep right on his classroom desk, totally worn out from training. The professor with glasses gets extremely furious, veins popping on his forehead, yelling out to know if his biology class is really that boring. He angrily complains that the boy missed a whole month and demands he stand up immediately, while the other classmates start laughing at the scolding. Surrounded by a dark aura and looking totally drained, Ringo sincerely apologizes, explaining he has been overly tired due to intense physical workouts over the past few weeks. Classmates mock and laugh, asking why the worst student in school would be training so hard, suggesting he only trains to sleep on the floor. The annoyed professor orders the boy to explain the theoretical definition of beast transformation under the threat of punishing him severely if he cannot answer the question. Ringo scratches his head, confused while thinking of the answer, aware that after a month of fights and escapes, his tiny dragon finally secured a safe, stable home. Ringo realizes he needs to go to class once in a while to avoid getting expelled, but his true focus is becoming the strongest of all for the sake of his father. On top of that, he urgently needs to make money to pay Ruby's medical bills and buy his baby dragon's special formula. While the hero gets lost in thought, the students in the room keep complaining about the usefulness of learning all that theory about transformation. The professor keeps explaining the material normally, when suddenly a dark, intimidating presence emerges outside the room. A loud boom echoes through the place, causing all the students to start trembling in fear at the massive spiritual pressure invading the classroom. The students wonder if that was an earthquake, while a mysterious figure walks calmly down the hallway, frightening everyone. Everyone falls into despair upon noticing the shiny tiger badge, revealing the intruder belongs to the elite campus of that prestigious school. A scared student explains to his classmate that they are in the worst area of the campus, where nobody's transformation rate exceeds 15%. That badge belongs to the upper campus, which is packed with true monsters with a transformation rate exceeding 50%. Outside, the classroom door finally opens, and a hand pushes the entrance, asking to be excused in a very cold, intimidating manner. The rich young man named Chao Meng appears at the door accompanied by his butler and disdainfully announces he is there to select 3 prey items. The whole class panics upon recognizing the guy as the prodigy who holds the record for the youngest transformation on the elite campus. Ringo watches the scene with close attention, focusing his gaze directly on the shiny gold brooch the guy wears on his uniform. The professor breaks into a cold sweat and stammers in terror, asking what would bring such an important young master to that humble classroom. Running out of patience, Cao Ming runs his hand through his blonde hair and demands he not make him repeat himself, as he needs 3 prey items for a proficiency test. The class starts whispering in terror. Knowing this hunting test uses the lives of regular students and usually leaves survivors mutilated. With a bored look, the arrogant rich kid flat out tells everyone they are just second-class, disposable citizens anyway. The students are completely outraged by the unprovoked humiliation, as the blonde does not even treat them like actual human beings. Even his loyal butler, wearing a monocle, discreetly warns that the young master perhaps should not say those types of things out loud. The rich kid just scoffs and gestures for the students to pretend he never said that, while the whole class breaks into a cold sweat out of terror. Chao Meng adds that he will buy the selected ones' lives with money, offering around 100,000 coins to the survivors. The students tremble with rage and humiliation at that absurd proposal, feeling that the young master really crossed all acceptable limits. Ringo thinks that would be a great chance to make easy money, but decides the best move for now is to avoid getting involved with this guy. At that moment, one of the students slams his hand hard on the desk, revealing furry claws as he stands up, completely enraged by the situation. The boy wearing a green beanie screams in outrage, demanding an end to that cursed rule, and questions why they should serve as entertainment for the rich. Except before he even finishes speaking, the butler moves at high speed and delivers a brutal blow using his transformed furry tail. The rebel lets out a scream of agonizing pain as he is violently blasted backward by the overwhelming attack from the elderly man wearing a monocle. The poor guy falls, unconscious, onto the classroom floor, leaving all the other students completely paralyzed and terrified by his strength. The butler mockingly apologizes to the professor, saying he took the liberty of maintaining classroom discipline using his gun finger. The professor stammers in terror and thanks him for the help, promising he will fully cooperate with the elite young master's demands. The students silently realize the power gap between them and the elite warriors is a giant chasm that is simply impossible to bridge. Clapping his hands happily, Cao Meng announces that since nobody has any objections, he will begin picking his 3 prey items for the round. The blonde points to a brute with crocodile teeth who accepts the call with a maniacal grin on his face, eager to fight. Next, he points to the boy wearing red dark glasses who has the pangolin ability, leaving him completely shocked by the choice. The third pick is a girl with skunk transformation who immediately panics, asking why on earth she was selected. To try and get out of danger, the crocodile brute raises his hand and decides to nominate another person who, according to him, would be the perfect prey. The traitor points his finger directly at Ringo, asserting that the MC is hands down the best toy option for the rich kid's test. Cao Meng gives a thumbs up and agrees to include one more participant in the hunt, saying that to him, one more or less makes no difference. The big guy gives a wicked chuckle at the hero, while Ringo simply stares back at him with a completely calm look, showing zero reaction. The blonde warns that the 4 selected must meet him right after class ends, while the other students sigh in relief for escaping. But before the young master can leave the classroom, Ringo calmly raises his hand, mentioning he has a very important question to clear up. The hero questions if the test really consists of them running through the forest while the young master tries to hunt them down like animals. With an extremely cold glare, Ringo asks what would happen to the rules of the game if the prey decides to counterattack and kill the hunter. Cao Meng stands in complete shock at the boy's audacity, staring at him with a crazy look full of hatred over that bold question. The entire room starts mocking Ringo, thinking he has gone completely insane out of fear to suggest he could beat an elite monster. Finding the MC's courage amusing, the blonde promises that if Ringo wins, he will give him a valuable vial of evolution potion as a prize. The butler frantically tries to intervene, saying the young master cannot do that, since that special potion is extremely precious. The elite heir shoots a deadly glare at the elderly man and asks if he needs his permission to make decisions, shutting the old man up. Short time later, the group gathers at the edge of a colossal canyon, where the deadly hunt is about to begin in a natural arena. The area map shows that the deadly test will take place on the training grounds surrounding the elite campus, far from any outside help. Cao Meng explains that the hunt rules are very simple, as they get a half-hour head start and only need to survive for 3 hours to win. He mockingly warns that the challengers can run and hide however they want, but if they get caught, they go straight to a hospital bed for 6 months. The arrogant blonde even points at Ringo, joking that they also have the near-impossible option of trying to defeat him to win the game. He sarcastically says the chance of that happening is practically 0, while Ringo silently realizes the guy's butler would never let him lose. The hunt briefing ends, and the crocodile guy worriedly asks how they are going to get up to the test arena at the cliff top. Suddenly, a massive raptor claw emerges from the sky and grabs the scared guy by the back before he could even process what was happening. A warrior with owl wings named Lao Wu comes flying in and carries all 4 prey items at once with his gigantic claws toward the cliff. The owl asks if the young master needs a ride up, but the arrogant guy rejects it right away, saying he will climb up as a warm-up. The flying monster takes off carrying the prey, while Cao Meng prepares at the canyon base to begin his massive vertical training climb. Ringo is carried by the monster's sharp claws without showing the slightest sign of fear, keeping a completely calm and analytical stance. The owl simply drops the 4 students from high up in the sky, making almost all of them fall screaming in despair toward the solid ground. Fortunately, everyone manages to land and finally arrives at training ground number 5, which is a massive plain filled with gigantic rocks. Down below, Cao Meng realizes his prey's half-hour head start is finally over, and that the moment has come to start the fun. The blonde casually takes off his tie with a confident smile on his face, ready to release his powerful beast form for the hunt. He tosses his school clothes onto the grass, making himself completely comfortable to begin the transformation process that will render him relentless. Cao Meng transforms into a nimble wild monkey with golden fur and a long tail, promising to finish that hunt in just a few minutes. The three classmates start running desperately across the rocky plain, screaming that they just need to survive for 3 hours to get out of there alive. The big crocodile guy runs chuckling, thinking that dragging Ringo along was a great idea, since he will serve as a meat shield to buy time. Ringo realizes the hunter underestimated them so much he did not even bother confiscating their phones, and decides to pull out his device to make a quick call. Meanwhile, the massive owl continues soaring through the arena skies, monitoring every student's movement so nobody tries to cheat. Ringo calls Garfield and curiously asks where she and the others went with the baby dragon in the middle of all that chaos. On the other end of the line, Garfield almost falls over upon discovering the hero ended up getting mixed up in a dangerous hunting game against the elite. The cat girl sarcastically tells him to rest in peace, while Ringo reminds her that his dragon flame ability was just recharged. Even confident, the hero mentions he needs an extra guarantee and asks his friend to help him contact an important ally. On the rocky plain, the other three runaways keep running out of breath and tired, trying to find some safe hideout among the rocks. They finally stop to rest behind a large boulder, believing Ringo must have fallen behind and served as bait for the hunter. The crocodile trader laughs to himself, saying the world is cruel and that Ringo only has himself to blame for being a complete useless guy without powers. Ringo pops up unexpectedly behind him and warns in an eerily calm tone that just running away like cowards will not achieve anything. The big crocodile guy gets a massive scare seeing the hero right there beside him and angrily yells, asking how he managed to get there so fast. Ringo begins calmly explaining that a wild buffalo is stronger than a lion, but ends up turning into food simply out of fear of fighting together. Tired of listening to the MC's theoretical lecture, the big guy starts transforming out of anger, aggressively charging straight at him. Except in a nimble and relentless move, the hero moves fast and delivers an open palm strike directly to the crocodile's face. The surprise attack hits the brute's face dead on, sending spit and teeth flying with the tremendous physical strength demonstrated by our hero. Ringo seriously warns that he knows very well about all his dirty games, but guarantees he does not care, and that now things are going to change. He pins the crocodile to the ground with one hand and demands with a dark glare that the big guys start obeying his commands from here on out. Meanwhile, Cao Meng in his monkey form tracks the student's footprints through the grass and easily notices the tracks end nearby. The predator walks slowly between the plain's massive boulders, unaware that he is about to face a huge surprise from his prey. Wasting no time, Ringo goes on the offensive, charging out of surprise at top speed straight toward the arrogant elite blonde. The hero tries to land a direct punch on his opponent's face, who merely watches the attack approach with total calmness and mockery in his eyes. Cao Meng laughs at the boy's audacity upon seeing his strategy is a direct frontal attack, mockingly praising the worst student's courage. The hero replies that he needs to try to find out the truth, and that he wishes to measure the real power gap between himself and the elite warriors. Except the elite blonde dodges all the punches with extreme ease, mocking the MC by repeating several times that he is way too slow. The golden monkey keeps making fun of Ringo's lack of skill, biting asks if he can even use beast transformation. Ringo tries to keep attacking, but frustratingly realizes his opponent's moves are way too fast for him to land a single punch. Finally, Ringo lands a heavy strike against the opponent's crossed arms, generating a huge impact that echoes loudly across the rocky plain. The young master blocks the punch without moving a single millimeter of his body, disdainfully complaining that the hero's punch was way too weak for him. Cao Meng glares at him up close with a sadistic smile and red eyes, revealing that this fight is starting to make him completely bored. With a fast, imperceptible motion, the blonde twists his body, preparing to deliver a violent whip strike using his powerful tail. The tail strikes Ringo dead on and hurls him violently into the distance, sending the boy flying through the air with the devastating force of the surprise blow. But before the blonde can celebrate, the transformed crocodile brute emerges out of nowhere behind him, leaping ready for a fierce attack. The crocodile guy tries to take a brutal surprise bite out of Chow Meng, but the elite warrior is way too fast and manages to dodge the attack with ease. With an absurdly fast, violent kick, the rich kid hits the alligator's jaw dead on, sending the big guy straight to the ground with immense force. Upon seeing their strongest companion defeated in seconds, the other two girls fall into complete despair, not knowing what to do to fight. Cao Meng moves like a blur and grabs both students' necks at the same time before they could even try to pull off any escape attempt. The blonde lifts both into the air effortlessly while mockingly stepping on the fallen crocodile's head, saying this game keeps being totally boring. In this moment of distraction, Ringo re-emerges behind the enemy's back, eyes glowing red, ready to start round 2 of that battle. Ringo charges forward to deliver a powerful strike, but the cowardly blonde uses both captured classmates as human shields to block the hero's attack. Cao Meng laughs, saying Ringo is not a nice guy for attacking anyway, but warns that the hero's strike is so weak he does not even need to defend to tank it. Except in the very next fraction of a second, the young master's arrogant smile vanishes from his face, replaced by an expression of pure awe and surprise. A sharp cracking sound echoes through the air, revealing that the elite rich kid's defense barrier was just cracked by the unbelievable force of the hero's fist. Ringo completely shatters his opponent's guard and delivers a crushing strike that rips the blonde's clothes and makes him grunt in pain for the first time in the fight. With the villain dazed by the impact, our hero shouts out loud to his teammates, warning that this is their only chance to attack together. Up above, the owl watches the fight thoughtfully, suspecting the prey intentionally lured the young master into that rock maze to ambush him. Taking advantage of the opening, the crocodile guy recovers and firmly grabs Cao Meng's legs, pinning the blonde so he cannot escape. The girl with skunk transformation takes a deep breath, preparing to use her secret, grossest special ability directly in the enemy's face. She releases a massive cloud of toxic green smoke that rapidly spreads through the rock crevices, creating a terrible stink bomb. Cao Meng falls into total despair from the unbearable stench, screaming that his eyes are burning, and tries to cover his nose to avoid passing out from the gas. Immediately after, the pangolin boy transforms into a giant spiky ball and rolls at high speed toward the blonde to deliver a heavy impact. The high-speed attack hits the rich kid's face dead on, generating a spark explosion that leaves the elite hunter completely dazed on the ground. The group unloads a frantic sequence of combined attacks, taking advantage of every second of the smokescreen to try to subdue the powerful opponent. Despite the combo, the arrogant blonde re-emerges laughing, saying their teamwork was excellent, but the attacks are still weak like tickles to him. Wasting no time, Ringo leaps onto the villain's back along with the others to hold him, while warning that now he will see the group's true power. The crocodile guy uses all his strength to execute his death roll, spinning the blonde's body at high speed in the air to slam him onto the ground. Cao Meng lets out a scream of rage and pain as he is violently spun upside down, unable to use his arms to break the terrible fall. The impact against the ground is so devastating that it creates a gigantic dust cloud and destroys several surrounding rocks with the group's colossal throw. In the middle of the smoke, Ringo lets out a loud, specific whistle to coordinate the next steps of the escape plan, while the enemy tries to recover. The runaways celebrate joyfully, believing the elite warrior is nothing more than an overrated failure and that their victory is already guaranteed. The skunk girl yells happily that they won, but a colossal, scary shadow pops up out of nowhere behind her, making her smile vanish instantly. A crushing spiritual pressure takes over the entire rocky plain, blocking out the sunlight, leaving the sky with a grim, scary look. Ringo senses the imminent danger, eyes wide, and takes a quick leap backward to try to escape the massive threat that just appeared in the arena. Two gigantic red gorilla-like beasts emerge, summoned by Cao Meng, and one of them brutally stomps on the poor, helpless crocodile's back. The three students lie severely injured and bloody on the ground, crying in pain as they realize the monstrous level gap of that opponent. The MC stares at the scene completely perplexed and tense, noticing the arrogant rich kid also possesses his own mystical battle creatures. The two colossal beasts with armor and heavy weapons take up positions beside Cao Meng, who now glares at them with a cold, extremely killer look. Ringo swallows hard, verifying that the enemy controls two elite beasts simultaneously, heavily complicating his chances of survival. The blonde warns that this was supposed to be just a simple test, but since they dared to hurt him, he changed his mind and is now playing to kill everyone. With a direct order from the villain, the giant gorillas raise their heavy weapons and charge relentlessly to deliver a crushing attack on the group. With no other choice, Ringo bites his own hand with great force, activating his Dragon Flame mode to be able to go head-to-head with the monsters. The hero, with flaming arms, grabs his injured classmate and jumps to the side, narrowly dodging a sword slash that destroys the stone floor. He moves quickly through the air, saving the skunk girl from another deadly attack, while spiritual fire sparks cover his entire dragon body. The crocodile guy begs for help on the ground, and although he does not really want to help, Ringo decides to go back and carry the traitorous big guy in his arms. The giant gorilla delivers a devastating spinning slash that throws rocks everywhere, forcing the hero to yell for everyone to duck fast. Ringo complains that the monsters attack without leaving any opening and despairs upon remembering that his flame mode only lasts 45 seconds. High up on the canyon, the monocle assistant stands shocked upon noticing the young master needed to summon his two primary battle beasts. In this moment of distraction, a mysterious figure wearing a green hood comes flying through the sky and lands smoothly on the edge of the rock canyon. The mysterious intruder spreads their wings and fires a literal torrential rain of sharp spikes toward the elderly man, who gets startled by the offensive. The butler uses his eagle wings to create a powerful spinning windshield, successfully deflecting all projectiles fired at him. However, the old man realizes too late that the enemy attack was actually not directed at him, but rather at a much more important target down below. The butler yells frantically for the young master, while Cao Meng looks up confused, seeing the rain of spikes falling in his direction. The giant gorillas act quickly and use their large bronze shields to protect the blonde, successfully blocking the mysterious projectiles. The butler tries to pursue the mysterious intruder in the sky, shouting that they severely underestimated the power of the Cao family to attempt a surprise attack like that. The mysterious ally flees flying at top speed, thinking they fulfilled their mission of creating just an opening to help Ringo because of the baby dragon. Seeing the opening created in the sky, Ringo warns his teammates that they have only a fraction of a second to manage to throw off the giant gorillas. The hero asks if the pangolin boy can create a chaotic distraction, and the ally responds excitedly that he is super hyped for the plan. The boy rolls quickly on the ground like a spiky ball, kicking up a massive dust and smoke screen to blind the two battle gorillas. Cao Meng angrily complains about the dirt and smoke, mockingly questioning if the prey really believe they have any chance of winning the fight. The skunk transformation girl trembles with fear, but takes a deep breath and gathers all the courage left in her body, promising to give her best. Ringo puts the girl on his back and sprints at top speed with his flaming arms toward the enemies to finish the bold plan. The MC moves like true fire lightning, skillfully dodging the direct frontal attack from the dangerous elite giant monkeys. Cao Meng gets startled, realizing the hero easily passed through the first gorilla's defense and is already coming right at him. Ringo keeps running at top speed, splitting into several blurry images to completely confuse the desperate hunter's eyes. The second battle gorilla pops up in front of Cao Meng and starts spinning its massive bronze shield to create an absolute defensive barrier. Ringo strikes the bronze shield with a flaming punch, causing a massive shockwave that makes the enemy back up a bit from the heavy impact. The arrogant blonde lets out a loud laugh, provoking the hero by saying he would need 10,000 years to manage to break his beast's absolute defense. Except suddenly, the young master looks up confused, realizing Ringo's punch was just a distraction to throw the skunk girl into the air. The girl drops from the sky straight toward Chao Meng, determined to give everything she's got to manage to save her teammates' skins. She lands perfectly on top of the blonde and tightly clings to his neck with her legs so he cannot move or escape. The little girl covers Chao Meng's mouth and nose with her hands filled with energy and releases her terrible, concentrated stink gas right in his face. Chao Meng's eyes go wide in complete shock and terror as he feels that foul, indescribable smell invade his lungs without warning. The green stink smoke explosion hits the elite young master's nostrils dead on, suffocating the guy with the worst smell of his entire life. The companions watch the scene out of breath and exhausted, desperately hoping that bizarre attack was enough to win. Chao Meng starts coughing and crying frantically in pain, dropping to his knees on the ground, completely defeated by the concentrated, terrible stench. With the hunter's loss of consciousness, both colossal battle beasts vanish into mid-air, saving the group from the terrible slaughter that was coming. Ringo, who was about to run off as his flame time ran out, gets a fright seeing the battle gorillas simply vanished from the map. The hero breathes a sigh of relief, verifying that the summoned creatures really stopped moving and completely vanished after their owner passed out. News of the victory spreads through the lower campus, and students start celebrating hysterically upon learning someone finally beat the hunter. A TV news crew shows up at the scene and points the mic at Ringo, asking what miraculous strategy they used to win. To everyone's surprise, the other survivors point to the crocodile, lying that he defeated Chao Meng alone and carried the team on his back. Ringo whispers in an extremely scary way into the alligator's ear, ordering him to accept that fake honor if he really wants to stay alive. Breaking into a cold sweat out of terror, the alligator guy nods and takes credit for the victory while the whole crowd starts chanting his name. In a luxurious mansion, Chao Meng appears with his head down, holding hands and trembling with shame before an imposing female presence in the room. The blonde's mother, powerful Supreme Counselor Cao Mang, asks with extreme coldness if her prodigy son really passed out because of a skunk. The butler tries to take the blame, explaining that he ended up lowering his guard during the test, but the woman authoritatively cuts him off immediately. Cao Meng starts crying, apologizing for bringing so much shame to his family, while masked maids watch everything in silence. Seated in an imposing manner, Supreme Counselor Cao Mang does not even look at the boy's face, maintaining an expression of absolute disdain for her son. The blonde woman says bitterly and cruelly that she cannot understand how she ended up having such a useless, failed son like him in the Cao family. She gets up and leaves, coldly warning that she never wants to see the boy's face again, leaving the young master completely devastated in the room. In this moment of sadness, older brother Cao Li enters the luxurious room, ironically commenting on their mother's terrible rage. The older brother tries to comfort the injured butler, telling the man to go see a doctor, while young Chao Meng quietly cries in the corner of the room. Cao Li places his hand on his younger brother's head, telling him to stop crying, and promises he will personally talk to their mother to calm her down. He reassures that the youngest is very strong, explaining that their mother's irritation is due to other important matters troubling the counselor. The Supreme Counselor walks imposing down the mansion's beautiful hallways, closely accompanied by her two loyal masked assistants. The blonde opens the large doors of a luxurious meeting room and greets the other Supreme Council members who were already all gathered there. The most influential members of Longson's Supreme Council awaited the blonde's arrival, sitting comfortably on the room's plush couches. The counselors complain about her delay while trading some ironic banter about beauty and the true urgency of that important meeting. Chao Mang ignores the silly jokes and opens the meeting, stating seriously that 20 long years have passed since that terrible incident. She looks with determination at a massive mystical egg with dark scales and guarantees a new legendary dragon is about to be born in that world. All counselors present in the room open their eyes wide in complete shock upon hearing that absurd and unexpected claim from the Tao family leader. One of the council members angrily fires back, reminding her that the dragon race went completely extinct from the planet exactly 20 years ago. The man stands up to leave, questioning if she went completely insane or if the Cao family possesses some secret information no one else knows. Cao Mangmang fixes her penetrating gaze on the conference table and begins making some very dark revelations about the true nature of that school. She coldly explains that everyone in that institute can use beast transformation, and that brutal, cruel acts of violence happen all the time. The advisor reveals that the council tolerates the mutual elimination because that place was never a real school, but rather a dragon research facility. That massive institution was actually built as a top-secret, heavily guarded laboratory isolated atop that colossal cliff. She calls the other advisors outdated old geezers, saying they are nothing more than parasites who leached off dragon blood 30 years ago to climb the ladder. The members of the Supreme Council listen in total silence, pretending to be completely indifferent to those serious direct accusations made by the advisor. The bearded advisor scoffs, saying dragons have become mere ancient fossils and that the Council's current strength surpassed the level of those beasts long ago. The blonde warns that out of respect for their history, this is an advance notice, guaranteeing that anyone who gets in her way will be treated as an enemy. The burly old man with the beard gets completely furious at the blonde's audacity, berating the woman with intense rage in the middle of the council meeting room. The elderly woman with dark glasses and short hair calmly asks what the influential leader of the Cao family is planning to do from that moment on. Cao Mangmang responds in an authoritative, cold tone that she will immediately order a complete and thorough investigation across the entire school grounds. The bearded advisor smashes the armrest of his chair in outrage, shouting that this search is absurd and that they should have never let a woman lead them. The blonde calmly walks toward the exit and shoots back intimidatingly, saying he is free to start a civil war against her right now. Everyone in the room breaks into a cold sweat out of fear and gulps, realizing that the powerful leader of the Cao family is not playing around regarding that massive sweep. With no more time for nonsense, the advisor calls her eldest son, Cao Li, into the room, tasking him with leading the entire campus investigation. Cao Li bows respectfully before the advisors, promising that he will not let his uncles down during the searches at the school. Meanwhile, Ringo's group checks the items on their list and celebrates, seeing that they finally have enough money and allies to train in peace at the cabin. To kick off the training, the MC appears wearing a rather weird special flight suit designed for gliding at high altitudes. Mu Ye explains that hatchlings need to see their parents fly first, so Ringo will need to learn how to glide if he wants to teach his little baby dragon. Instructor Bao Bao appears with his mystical wings and orders the boy to jump off the cliff, offering a few technical tips on how to maintain body balance in mid-air. The brown-haired MC takes a deep breath and tries to calm his nerves, promising himself that he will make that risky leap work. Ringo jumps off the cliff, but soon realizes that controlling the flight suit is extremely difficult, while the little red dragon watches the whole thing, shaking like a leaf. The hero ends up losing total control of his speed and belly flops right into the ocean, making a huge, embarrassing splash at the beach. The little mystical reptile gets so terrified by his owner's bad wipeout that he runs to hide, trembling behind Garfield's legs. Ringo emerges from the water coughing heavily and letting out a frustrated shout, realizing that mastering gliding will be much harder than he imagined. The tamer Mu Ye sighs at the failure and teases that now the little dragon will be even more scared of flying thanks to the terrible example set by his owner. Thinking it over, the friends wonder if it wouldn't be better to break down the movements into simpler, easier steps so the hero can train more effectively. The winged instructor lands smoothly on the beach and explains with a smug smile that Ringo needs to learn to engage his core and glutes in midair. Garfield and Mu Ye glare at the man with deep suspicion and yell at the creepy instructor to back away from the MC on the beach immediately. Ringo sits on the ground, discouraged beside his pet, and explains to his friends that he was the one who called the man, knowing he is the only one who actually knows how to fly. Garfield keeps complaining that the instructor is a dangerous weirdo, while the winged man cheerfully offers to help with the hatchling's growth. The instructor raises a finger with a sarcastic smile on his face and announces that Ringo's training will begin with 200 freefall jumps off the cliff. The The cat girl goes into complete shock upon hearing that, screaming in panic that taking to the skies with that man is basically asking to get wrecked. Garfield shakes Muye's arm in a panic, begging her friend to put a stop to this madness before the MC ends up seriously hurting himself in the fall. Muye observes thoughtfully and remarks to his friend that the hero always operates with a plan, and that he seems to be testing the instructor's loyalty. High up in the sky, the instructor carries Ringo by the shoulders and warns him seriously that a kid would lose his life if dropped from such a colossal height. The long-haired man smiles and asks if this dangerous situation is actually Ringo's third trust test for him. He reveals he knows that Ringo investigated him for weeks and that now the boy is putting his own life in his hands to measure the depth of his loyalty. The instructor spreads his mystical wings high in the sky and asks curiously who Ringo really is, since the boy's background records at the school are completely blank. Without giving time for an answer, the instructor simply lets go of the MC in midair, sending the youth plummeting in a high-speed free-fall toward the sea. Ringo faces the drop with wide, focused eyes, while Garfield watches everything frantically from the beach top, screaming her friend's name. Before the youngster impacts the ground, the master dives swiftly and rescues him, catching the boy by the legs just above the surface of the sea. Dangling upside down and completely out of breath, Ringo tries to catch his wind after the scare of that massive free fall of several hundred meters. The instructor asks, with a friendly smile, if the boy finally trusts him now, demanding to know what grand mystical secret he is hiding. The hero simply ignores the question cold-heartedly and snickers, reminding him that there are still 199 jumps left to finish today's session. Ringo leaps again with open arms, attempting to follow the mental cues to engage his core muscles and feel the rhythm of the wind currents. A montage shows the persistent MC plummeting repeatedly from the sky, reaching the mark of 35 and then 49 jumps. Even though completely exhausted and bruised, the warrior keeps jumping non-stop, reaching an impressive mark of 121 leaps off the cliff. Hitting jump number 150, Garfield sighs in boredom on the beach, complaining that the hero has turned into a total workout fanatic and doesn't play anymore. The poor little red dragon remains huddled on the beach sand, shivering in fear, watching his beloved owner's bizarre glutton for punishment training. The winged instructor decides to call it a day on the grueling drills, as night has quickly fallen over the forest and no one can see a thing anymore. Ringo returns to the cabin totally wiped out from fatigue, but his companion Muye announces with a smile that he will help him do some stretching. The tamer uses a pink foam roller on the hero's back, drawing screams of discomfort from Ringo while Garfield and the tiny reptile watch on, startled. Muye chuckles and says that tomorrow the guy will feel much better, even if every single muscle in his body ends up aching from the effort. Even while trembling from the soreness, the hero tries to act tough, giving a thumbs up and swearing through grit teeth that it was a walk in the park. Later, the whole group gathers inside the cabin to rest, while the exhausted hero keeps shivering from the cold, lying on the living room floor. Ringo notices the tiny mystical reptile shivering beside him and asks with a gentle smile if the cute little creature is actually worried about him. He pats the hatchling's head and affectionately says that both of them need to grow up real fast if they want to stand on their own 2 feet on campus. Garfield pops up holding a glass of bizarre green liquid, proudly announcing that she prepared a special mystical tonic certified by the doctor. The cat girl explains that the recipe mixes milk with raw eggs and various medicines, leaving Ringo and the rest of the cabin friends completely grossed out by the juice. Despite everyone's protests, the determined hero decides to chug the whole glass in one gulp, swearing he will do whatever it takes to get stronger. Ringo ends up passing out cold, foaming at the mouth immediately after drinking the weird juice, sending Garfield and Muye into a frenzy thinking he met his end. The Wingmaster recalls that the youngster received an evolution potion from Cao Meng, noting that it would be perfect to heal his body and boost his power. The MC regains consciousness and pulls the glowing vial of green liquid from his pocket, staring closely at the precious bottle for a few seconds. Ringo gives props to his opponent for keeping his word to hand over the potion, but sighs, stating that his own dragon constitution renders the item useless to him. The wing instructor watches the scene intrigued, asking out of curiosity if the boy had happened to take that special potion before. Ringo reaches out and gifts the precious bottle to Garfield as a token of thanks for the glass of milk she gave him earlier. The master encourages the cat girl to drink it, saying she possesses incredible hidden potential and that the potion will help her break through her limits. However, the lazy cat girl turns down the gift on the spot, declaring that she only uses her powers to make daily life easier and hates getting dragged into fights. Not knowing what to do with the valuable item, Garfield suggests giving the bottle to Mu Ye, but the young tamer quickly passes on it, leaving the master looking utterly bewildered. Mu Ye explains seriously that, just like Dr. Fan Fan, he lacks the beast transformation genes and is therefore unable to transform. The youth reveals that his true life goal is to inherit his family's legacy and become a legendary dragon tamer just like his parents. He shares that his alcoholic uncle had talked about his parents' past before, and that he only believed the story after seeing Ringo's dragon hatchling. Mu Ye discloses that the massive Longsen Academy was originally founded by 4 grand advisors who controlled the legendary 4 divine beasts. The mystical monsters guarding the school sectors were the white tiger, the vermilion bird, the black tortoise, and finally, the mighty legendary dragon. His late parents' faction belonged specifically to the dragon sector, but the divine creature ended up perishing in an ancient war that also took their lives. The young tamer reveals that the legendary dragon rider named Lin Yuecheng also ended up vanishing mysteriously without a trace following the Grand War. As night falls over the luxurious buildings of the elite campus, the vibe starts getting super tense inside the investigators' secret offices. A massive, intimidating stack of confidential files and secret archives from old-school investigations is dumped onto the young heir's desk. Cao Li rubs his forehead in exhaustion and complains that his mother is out of her mind for ordering him to dig up clues about dragons in the middle of all this old paperwork. Several bespectacled female assistants keep bringing endless piles of new documents, demanding the youth's signature while he desperately pleads for silence. Unable to take it anymore, the heir decides to shove a huge mountain of paper onto his secretary, ordering her to pass all that workload down to the lower sectors. The scene cuts to the school hospital in the dark of night, where the overworked lab staff are also complaining about the insane workload. Dr. Fan Fan adjusts her glasses tiredly, commenting that she needs to take care of her little dog Ruby and won't survive working much longer at this pace. Right in the middle of her exhaustion, her lab boss appears in the hallway carrying a huge stack of new files and confidential test reports. The arrogant woman in the pencil skirt walks off from the hospital, wishing the scientists a good shift as they bow respectfully to her departure. Dr. Fan Fan's eyes go wide in complete shock upon receiving the massive stack of lab reports she needs to wrap up within 1 week. The doctor cries in desperation while hugging the documents, grumbling that she can't stand working in this nightmare of a place for even one more day. But as she glances at the top page, she comes across an old confidential file describing a mysterious case of a rat infestation in an old dormitory. Back in the sky, the MC dives through the air and cheers joyfully, realizing he has finally caught the exact flow and direction of the wind. The wingmaster dives swiftly through the orange sunset sky and catches the hero, taking his hand in a friendly grip before they hit the water. With night falling over the forest, the confident hero announces he is ready to test the flight suit one more time, swearing he will manage to glide now. The MC prepares for the new leap, holding the dragon hatchling in his lap under the watchful eyes of Garfield, Mu Ye, and his eccentric master. The wingmaster observes the brown-haired hero with an enigmatic, mysterious glare, wearing a subtle, eerie smirk on his face. The man with long black hair thinks in absolute silence, staring at the hero with total conviction that Ringo is actually Lin Yuecheng's long-lost son. A flashback from 15 years ago reveals the little hero at just 3 years old, rubbing his eyes in his pajamas as a voice calls out for him to wake up quickly. The hero wakes up startled in the arms of his 35-year-old father, Lin Yuecheng, who appears injured and bleeding in the dead of night, telling his son not to worry. Several men dressed in black run through the city streets, confirming the path is clear and escorting Lin Yuecheng to save him from enemy ambushes. We see flashes of the terrible civil war that destroyed the city with massive explosions, and the emergence of colossal monsters amid total darkness. Little Ringo cries in terror, asking what is going on while trying to wipe away tears, seeing his beloved father bleeding so heavily in his arms. Lin Yuecheng holds his tiny son tight in the middle of the night, promising through a blood-stained gaze that he will never let anything bad happen to him. The loyal bodyguards run frantically through the dark alleys of the city, calling out through grit teeth that the secret exit is right up ahead. Suddenly, a gigantic serpent emerges from the shadows and attacks the guards with wild fury, triggering absolute chaos and panic along the group's escape route. One of the allies, transformed into a colossal wild boar, strikes the giant snake with a brutal punch to try to clear a path for the boss to escape. Several boar warriors charge forward roaring loudly, ready to tear apart any enemy to guarantee Lin Yuecheng's safety. However, the allied forces end up blindsided by other monstrous beasts creeping out of the shadows, attacking the group with extreme violence. Little Ringo watches the battle utterly terrified from his father's arms, noticing that lions and gigantic snakes have swarmed the area. A colossal chimera with the body of a lion steps into the battle arena under the command of the young heir of the powerful and ruthless Cao family. The boy of just 11 years old, named Cao Li, points his finger arrogantly, mocking that Lin Yuecheng is nothing more than trash without his legendary dragon. The brave boar guard boils with rage at the boy's insults and charges, yelling for the insolent brat to learn some respect for his elders. The terrifying lion chimera moves with relentless speed and crushes the boar guard without an ounce of mercy under the young master's sadistic orders. Through the smoke of the explosions, a young boy runs frantically toward them, screaming in panic for his uncle and little Ringo. The youngster of just 11 years old, named Lin Che, appears with a head wound holding a knife, letting out a breath of relief upon seeing his uncle still alive. The father places little Ringo into his young nephew's arms, hurriedly ordering him to take the toddler and go into hiding in the lower city. He commands Ringo to keep his identity a total secret in the lower city until the boy gains the power necessary to return with pride. The father bids farewell to his son, apologizing for forcing him to live in such a cruel world where there is no real difference between humans and beasts. Lin Che grabs the crying toddler in his arms and starts sprinting away from there, while Ringo screams frantically for his father amid the crossfire. The young heir of the Cao family laughs out loud atop his chimera, mocking Lin Yuecheng and saying he is going to end up like trash today. Little Ringo tries to break free every way he can, sobbing and screaming for his dad while being carried away in a rush by his cousin. Lin Che runs without looking back with the little boy in his arms, while Ringo's father stays behind alone, facing the terrible giant beast. The heroic Lin Yuecheng is brutally struck and ripped apart by the enemy beast's colossal claw, sacrificing his life to save his beloved son. The white-haired toddler falls into a complete state of shock and terror as he witnesses from afar the violent, tragic end of his heroic father. The scene cuts to the present, revealing the MC, Ringo, now 18 years old, wearing an extremely focused and vengeful glare. Back at the cliff plateau, the hero finishes telling his sad backstory, leaving Garfield and Mu Ye completely speechless. The young tamer is stunned to discover his friend is the son of the hunted legendary dragon rider, while Garfield asks confused who that was. The MC shoots back, saying the past doesn't matter now, and that their true focus is teaching the dragon hatchling to fly once and for all. Ringo recalls with firm resolve the last command he received from his father to survive, deciding to initiate his decisive flight from the top. The hero leaps courageously off the cliff, swearing to himself that after waiting for 15 long years, he will finally return to the top of the world. He dives rapidly toward the sea, feeling the adrenaline surge through his veins with absolute certainty that he will conquer the upper city. Inspired by his beloved owner's courage, the little red dragon finally spreads his wings and leaps off the cliff to join him. From up above, his friends cheer enthusiastically upon seeing the dragon hatchling finally overcome his fear and jump boldly toward the sky. The cute little creature manages to glide perfectly beside Ringo, swooping with great elegance and lightness through the evening air currents. The hero smiles proudly and swears to his late father that he will soon be back at the top of the world, carrying his legendary dragon by his side. The magnificent little creature flies freely, drawing beautiful arcs in the orange sky, and Ringo decides to name his companion Chao Feng. The hero flies happily alongside the dragon Chao Feng, praising the creature for naturally feeling all the wind currents in the area. The gliding duo skims with speed over the shimmering ocean waters, savoring every second of that incredible, liberating moment in the sky. Ringo realizes that his flight suit only allows limited gliding, and that he will need to find a way to gain altitude again. Little Chao Feng senses his owner's trouble and positions himself right below him, wearing a super-focused and determined look to help him out. The little red dragon spins at high speed right beneath the hero, generating a wind vortex that manages to launch him upward once more. The powerful airflow created by the pet shoots Ringo's body straight into the air, rocketing back up toward the top of the cliff. The hero shouts in excitement as he feels himself soaring back up, while Garfield and Muye celebrate happily seeing the incredible flight display. The tamer praises the creature, explaining that the pet learned to harness the wind, proving the immense level of bond that exists between the two of them. The friends shout from the edge of the beach, advising Ringo and Chao Feng to take a break from flight training to finally get some rest. Ringo and his beloved dragon land on the branch of a large seaside tree, quietly admiring the breathtaking sunset covering the horizon. The MC smiles warmly at his exhausted dragon hatchling, letting him know he brought some delicious meat cuts to feed the little guy. Chao Feng happily devours the snack, while Ringo warns him seriously that they will need to resume heavy training right after eating. The hero points to the massive rocky peak of the school, assuring that the duo's ultimate goal is to reclaim the top of that cliff. Down at the base of the cabin, Garfield's phone starts ringing, and she notices in surprise that it's an urgent call from Dr. Fan Fan. The cat girl answers excitedly to share the good news about Chao Feng's flight, but the doctor cuts her off nervously, asking if Ringo is nearby. The doctor reveals in a panic that the powerful cow family has launched a full search for the dragon, and that they might find traces of the pet in the dormitory. Dr. Fan Fan warns that since she handles the testing on the dormitory wreckage herself, she can delay submitting the official report by 1 month at most. Hearing this, Garfield and Muye go into total panic, screaming that the CIO family is the most powerful in the council and that the hero needs to run away from the school. Ringo listens to the warning, maintaining a thoughtful, serious expression, as he knows he never planned to keep his dragon Chao Feng hidden forever. The MC watches his dragon hatchling sleeping on the floor, nervously realizing that 1 month is way too short a time to prepare properly. Wearing a very stern expression, the brown-haired hero decides to look for Instructor Bao Bao to ask a crucial question about the rules. Ringo asks if low-tier students really have a shot at ranking up to secure the right to own their own elite pets. The wingmaster confirms the rumor with a smirking smile, but warns that to secure that official license, the hero will have to prove he is a formidable warrior. He reveals that the only way to obtain official authorization from the council is to challenge and defeat a chimera creature in a life-or-death battle. Garfield goes into total shock at the master's outrageous revelation, yelling that it's impossible for tiny Chao Feng to fight when he is only 2 months old. Muye also grows extremely concerned, explaining that chimeras are colossal, insanely dangerous monsters, and that the power gap is a total abyss. Even knowing the impending danger, Ringo strokes his pet's head with a confident smile on his face, promising to train like his life depends on it. The MC extends his hand with confidence, asking if his friends are still down to keep helping him and his beloved Chao Feng. Crossing her arms, Garfield yells in irritation that she flat-out refuses to take part in a suicide mission that is guaranteed to go south. The friends spend the entire night discussing escape options inside the cabin, but Master Bao Bao calmly notes that running away now will only get them caught. After much debate, everyone in the cabin decides to combine their strength in a solemn pact, promising to do everything for the growth of the dragon Chao Feng. As night falls, a scary lightning storm begins covering the entire sky over the stables of the school's logistics department. Uncle Jiao Da drinks beer in the barn, complaining that his nephew Mu Ye vanished again without finishing his daily beast-feeding duties. Suddenly, firm footsteps of dress shoes echo in the barn mud, revealing that very unexpected visitors have just arrived at the scene. The tamer's uncle looks back confused with the beer bottle at his lips, noticing the presence of strangers in the middle of that storm. Cao Lie emerges in the barn accompanied by his attractive assistant, stating he came to investigate a weird discrepancy in the meat supplies over the past few months. Meanwhile, the group's training continues frantically in the middle of the forest, with Garfield shouting at the dragon Kaofeng not to crash into the tall trees. Everyone pitches in during the exhausting prep, with Mu Ye keeping track of laps and Bao Bao pushing the hero to fly even faster to build endurance. Colossal lightning strikes the trees surrounding the forest, while the duo's intense training sessions press on under torrential rain. Chao Feng, now 2.5 months old, roars majestically atop a rock, absorbing the mystical lightning energy falling from the sky. Ringo drops to his knees on the forest floor, completely spent and drenched in sweat after training so hard and pushing his body's physical limits for 2 weeks straight. The friends approach slowly, asking anxiously if the hatchling's new technique finally worked out well in the trial run. Bao Bao praises Ringo's great results and chuckles, noting he is eager to see the guy and his pet's progress in the second half of the month. Garfield and Mu Ye celebrate happily, saying their plan might actually work, and decide to wrap up today's practice to go get some rest. But suddenly, Ringo notices a flock of birds flying away, scared in the sky, and glances up at the treetops, suspecting that something is off. A massive paw with sharp claws steps onto the damp forest grass, proving the enemy has finally tracked them down in the middle of their secret hideout. The barn snitch who followed them points the way with a laugh, informing Cao Li that he kept his end of the bargain and asking for his reward for turning in the boy. Arrogant Cao Li calmly states he always keeps his word, casting a cold, serious look toward the thick forest brush. The villain mentions that the mystical dragon is likely right up ahead, reminding them that the creature is a valuable asset they need to capture. A huge squad of elite assistants moves through the forest, accompanying the heir mounted atop his terrifying, monstrous, giant chimera. Ringo's group panics in the forest upon realizing that a huge army of elite female fighters is already surrounding their training spot. Instructor Bao Bao recognizes the enemy leading the squad, growing extremely tense upon seeing that the powerful heir Cao Lie came in person. Ringo gets furious, realizing that the 30-day window promised by the doctor was blown and that they were found way too fast. Bao Bao warns that the dragon stands no chance against Cao Li right now, ordering the hero to run with the others while he sacrifices himself to buy time. Ringo screams frantically for his instructor's name, refusing to leave him behind to fight the army's relentless forces alone. The man with glasses smiles back, saying he does everything for the legendary dragon's growth, assuring he is super eager to see the creature reach its ultimate form. The army of elite secretaries keeps advancing in total silence through the thick woods, clearing the path for Cao Li to lead the sweep. As they run frantically with Chao Feng through the forest, Mu Yi tells Ringo that the group will follow his lead blind so they can break away safely. Mounted on his colossal beast, Cao Li flashes a puzzled look and halts his chimera, spotting a strange figure standing still in the forest fog. Master Bao Bao calmly steps out, blocking the path, and asks sarcastically if they happen to be hunting for a dragon hatchling. Cao Li dismisses him with a mock wave of his hand, insincerely replying that dragons have been extinct for a long time, before ordering his army to attack. The wing instructor gives a defiant smirk and warns that given such a bold answer, he has no choice but to go all out in battle. The elite secretaries leap with sharp claws toward the master, who moves with incredible agility to dodge their brutal strikes. He unleashes his toxic purple insect gas ability, creating a heavy smoke screen that totally blinds his opponents. The elite warriors fall into total panic as they get swallowed by the poisonous gas, dropping to their knees on the ground, struggling hard to breathe. Bao Bao takes off swiftly and unleashes a torrential hail of sharp quills down on the enemies, who scream, recognizing his power. One of the elite soldiers yells frantically, warning her young master to be extremely careful with Instructor Bao Bao's flying quills. Cao Li lets out a wild roar and uses his ape-beast strength to swat away and shatter all the sharp quills flying toward him. The other assistants start fanning out through the thick woods, noting that the wing instructor won't be able to hold out against all of them at once. Instructor Bao Bao lets out a creepy chuckle, revealing that the higher the number of enemies, the more energy sources he has to drain in battle. Wearing a bizarre expression with his long tongue sticking out, the master reveals he is a parasitic wasp, willing to do anything to see the ultimate dragon born. With that, sharp red tendrils shoot out from the instructor's body, ruthlessly piercing the chests of several elite assistants all at once. One of the cat-eared soldiers screams in horror as she is struck dead on by the parasitic tendril, which begins draining her vital strength. The poor girl cries out in agony as her body rapidly shrivels up like a mummy, having all her life force stolen by the instructor. Cao Li watches the scene horrified and utterly disgusted, seeing the bizarre, parasitic technique used by the traitor to bring down his warriors. Bao Bao hovers, laughing out loud, while holding the girl's dehydrated bodies suspended in the air by his blood-soaked claws and tendrils. The villain taunts with a sneer, asking if the warriors serving the White Tiger family are really this weak and easy to take down. Suddenly, green vine tendrils burst from the ground and begin coiling around the instructor's claws, cutting off his energy drainage process. Bao Bao glances back, startled, and lets out a terrified grunt, realizing that someone insanely powerful and familiar has just arrived at the battlefield. His one-eyed superior emerges from the fog, sternly demanding what he thinks he is doing, allied with the sworn enemies of their secret faction. The master with glasses stammers confused, asking why his superior would be helping the Cow family, while the one-eyed man demands to know the dragon's location. Bao Bao falls into total panic, breaking into a cold sweat as he realizes he won't have an easy way out in the presence of that veteran warrior. The instructor extends his claws in a desperate strike, shouting that he is merely following the group's philosophy to achieve true greatness. The one-eyed man sighs that his message didn't sink into his head, deciding it's time to deliver a harsh lesson to the rebel using another technique. He warns that since the instructor won't listen to his advice, he will let a terrifying, legendary entity speak to him in person. The man removes his eye patch, exposing a surge of vibrant green spiritual energy that begins emanating directly from his empty eye socket. A gigantic, green, shadowy silhouette begins manifesting in the middle of the forest, terrifying all the surrounding animals with its overwhelming aura. The green mist takes physical shape, revealing the scary, bandaged face of a colossal monster that appears to be the supreme master of that cult. The massive green mummy, referred to as the Exalted One, stares down at Instructor Bao Bao with glowing yellow eyes, radiating crushing pressure. Bao Bao begins drooling from pure terror, falling to his knees on the forest floor, completely horrified to see the legendary Exalted One right before him. The monster demands to know the reason for its existence, and the trembling instructor responds, repeating over and over that he is nothing more than simple food for the master. From a distance, young Cao Li watches the instructor on his knees in shock at how easily he surrendered, commenting that the whole faction is nuts. The blonde heir decides to leave the scene mounted on his chimera, letting the Exalted One know he will leave their internal punishments for them to settle in the woods. As he moves away, Cao Li notices in surprise that a tiny, gross red parasite managed to latch onto the fabric of his luxury outfit. He rips off the red spike in anger and crushes it with his fingers, complaining irritably that the bugs from that faction are truly disgusting. The villain figures that the tiny parasite only managed to steal an insignificant fraction of his power, tossing the squished bug onto the ground. Cao Li commands the surviving assistants to keep up the intense search throughout the forest to track down the exact location of the dragon hatchling. Back at the cabin, the hero Ringo alerts his companions that their current team is way too weak to go head-to-head against Cao Li's army. Ringo states that their only remaining option is to get out of there as fast as possible before the search parties uncover their secret hideout. He explains they need to split into 3 different routes to execute a safe evacuation by land, sea, and air without exposing the dragon's existence. Xiaofeng shivers on the floor, and the hero orders Tamer Mu Ye to initiate the land escape route, heading at full speed toward the north. In the middle of the dense woods, one of the elite assistants with glasses catches a fast, suspicious movement darting through the forest bushes. She screams, calling out that she spotted the target, and the entire squad begins chasing Tamer Mu Ye, who is riding his gigantic black battle hound. The young tamer grits his teeth in pure anxiety, begging his companion to run even faster to slip away from those women's clutches. He demands max speed from his mount, but gets a terrible shock upon noticing a gigantic silhouette rapidly closing in from the forest flank. Mu Ye realizes in horror that the enemy's scary chimera is much bigger than he imagined, and that the gap between them is vanishing way too fast. Desperate, the youth orders the hound to try and plow through the enemy blockade to cut a path through the dark, dense woods. However, the lion's colossal chimera strikes with a crushing claw swipe, launching the boy and his battle hound flying from the sheer force of the blow. The violent collision snaps several surrounding trees, kicking up a massive cloud of dirt and dust that scares off all the roosting birds in the area. Mu Ye is slammed brutally onto the forest floor, rolling through the mud and groaning in intense pain as he feels the heavy impact of his fall. His beloved black battle hound lies stretched out on the ground, bleeding heavily and struggling to breathe after taking the beast's terrible blow. The young tamer cries out in desperation, sobbing as he sees his loyal 4-legged companion near death in the forest mud. Cao Li leaps down from his mount and stomps ruthlessly on the injured boy's face, shoving his head into the mud without showing a shred of pity. The arrogant blonde scans his body, complaining in total frustration upon seeing that the boy isn't carrying the dragon, muttering that it was a waste of time. The drunk uncle, Zhao Da, comes sprinting through the mud, falling to his knees and desperately begging the young master to spare his beloved nephew's life. Cao Li agrees to spare the boy out of consideration for the deal with the old man, but warns with a cold stare that he won't let the kid walk away scot-free. Cao Li sneers, deciding that to make up for the lost time, he will simply take one of the boy's legs. The desperate uncle thanks the villain humbly from the ground for his immense generosity in not taking his dear nephew's life. While the minion prepares his blade to sever the boy's leg, the wounded youth whispers for his uncle lying on the muddy ground. Right then, the assistant with glasses comes running over to report that they finally found the cabin where the group was hiding out. Out of breath, she walks through the misty forest, stepping up to the window of the empty cabin to inspect what's inside. She points forward, drawing Cao Li's attention to show him where the true culprit is trying to escape. Ringo is already far off, rowing a small wooden boat to get away using the sea route he mapped out. The blonde heir watches the tiny boat drift further out into the endless ocean, realizing the fugitive played it smarter than he looked. He realizes that choosing the sea route was cold-bloodedly calculated by the hero to make a quick emergency escape. The assistant offers to summon the aerial search unit, but the blonde notes that the guy will be way too far by the time they get here. With an evil grin, the villain remarks that his family isn't the only party interested in snagging that high-value dragon. Meanwhile, the hero keeps rowing with all his might, battling the rough waves under a gloomy, threatening sky. Ringo grows suspicious, noticing that his pursuers mysteriously aren't coming after him in the water. Suddenly, strange bubbles begin rising from the deep, and the hero glares nervously at the water's surface. A gigantic shadow of a sea monster with glowing yellow eyes looms right underneath his small boat. A massive blue tentacle with monstrous suckers bursts from the depths of the sea, striking the boat with devastating power. The hero panics completely, yelling in terror as he realizes he is getting attacked by a colossal octopus out in the middle of nowhere. The heavy impact shatters the wooden boat into 1,000 pieces, flinging the guy and his black backpack straight into the air. He screams as he plummets out of control toward the choppy water, trying to balance himself mid-air any way he can. From a distance, the villain's dark silhouette watches the boys fall from the front row without making the slightest move to step in. The blonde notices that the fugitive is guarding that black backpack with his life, wondering if the dragon hatchling is actually tucked inside. Already underwater, the hero clutches his backpack tightly, thinking frantically that he needs to buy time somehow. He lets out a muffled groan of pain, seeing one of the monster's gigantic tentacles swiftly reaching out to grab him. Multiple colossal tentacles emerge from the water, kicking up huge sprays of foam and boxing the guy in from every angle. The hero takes a direct hit from one of the sea monster's lashes, crying out in pain as he gets thrown by the impact. Ringo refuses to give up, setting up a quick counter-strike using his sharp claws to slice through the tentacle. He delivers a precise slash, tearing into the giant octopus's flesh with flaming claws that sizzle under the water. The guy seizes the opening, unleashing a devastating fire punch right onto the top of the sea monster's yellow head. The hero manages to catch his balance briefly, but realizes the creature is still alive and furious right below him. The colossal octopus rises fully to the surface, roaring in anger and tossing the youngster high into the air with its tentacles. The villain watches the easy capture from afar, mocking that taking down the kid was way simpler than he expected. Completely pinned by the blue tentacles, the hero coughs up blood, struggling to breathe as the monster squeezes him hard. Left with no options, the youngster decides to trigger his secret technique earlier than planned to break free from the grip. Meanwhile, the giant octopus begins slowly submerging, dragging the poor guy down into the dark depths of the ocean. Suddenly, the sea creature locks its massive yellow eye onto a strange heat anomaly bursting in the water. The water around them starts boiling violently, and intense thermal pressure begins expanding the monster's own body. Ringo bursts out of the waters in an explosion of pure fire, using his dragon form to incinerate everything around him. Cao Lie stands jaw-dropped, spotting that massive column of blazing flames shooting straight out of the icy sea. The villain yells in total shock, recognizing the legendary dragon fire radiating at full blast from the hero's transformed body. Eyes glowing with fire, the hero knows he only has 45 seconds in this mode, but assures himself it is enough. He takes off running at blazing speed over the surface of the water, leaving a glowing, boiling trail in his wake. Cao Li praises the guy's insane speed, deciding to summon his powerful beast called the Wild Lion to put an end to him for good. The lion's terrifying chimera lets out a deafening roar, making the entire forest and sea shake with its colossal rage. The wild lion slams the water with crazy force, forming a gigantic liquid wall to block the hero's path. Ringo charges straight toward the massive artificial tsunami, surprised by the colossal size of the enemy barrier. He realizes the scale of that attack is way too big to dodge just by sprinting across the ocean's surface. A gigantic pillar of water and ice shoots up into the sky, splitting the sea and cutting off any chance of escape for the youngster. Out of energy to breach the block, the youth ends up sinking back into the dark, freezing depths of the ocean. His protective flames get completely snuffed out by the freezing water, and the youngster loses consciousness as he slowly drifts down. The arrogant blonde finds the hero knocked out on the beach rocks, celebrating the capture while locking his eyes on the mysterious backpack. Cao Li unzips the black backpack eagerly, expecting to find the legendary creature, wondering if the dragon hatchling is really tucked away inside. He gets a massive shock upon looking into the bottom of the bag, realizing in pure anger that it is completely empty. The blonde villain glares at the hero lying on the rocky ground, demanding to know where the dragon is, while the guy just spits out water and coughs from exhaustion. Ringo plays dumb, staring straight at the enemy, cynically asking what he is talking about and what kind of dragon that would even be. Cao Li grabs him by the collar in absolute rage for being made a fool of, while the guy keeps thinking he won't be killed until the villain finds the pet. Suddenly, the blonde looks back, startled, remembering the cabin they searched a short while ago in the forest. He finally connects the dots of the puzzle, realizing that whole sea getaway was nothing but a distraction to pull them away from the area. Cao Li concludes in a rage that someone else took advantage of the chaos to rescue the dragon hatchling and carry him away to safety. The story flashes back 5 minutes, showing the determination in Garfield's eyes as she runs while carrying the creature. Back then, Ringo had instructed his loyal friend to take charge of getting Cao Feng out of there safely through the woods. The cat-eared girl went into total panic, pointing at herself and screaming that she could never pull off such a massive mission. Ringo insisted, stating that only she could pull it off, since he and Mu Ye were going to draw the enemy's heat, and that the dragon trusted her completely. Given the severity of the situation, the girl swallowed her fear and accepted the task, taking a deep breath with a fully locked-in, serious gaze. Hidden inside the dark cabin, the girl asks the little dragon for silence, while the assistants with glasses begin surrounding the place outside. When the enemies shout upon spotting Ringo's boat fleeing across the sea, the girl realizes that is her golden window to slip away from there. Back in the present, the villain furiously commands his henchmen to tie up the hero and immediately start hunting down the cat girl. Even tied up and battered, Ringo smiles victoriously, thinking they will never catch up to his friend and capture the little dragon hatchling. Deep in the thick woods, Garfield dashes forward at top speed like a green blur, nimbly dodging through the trees. She cheers joyfully, thinking the escape worked, but suddenly stops dead in her tracks upon spotting something totally unexpected right in front of her. Dr. Fan appears wearing a hairbun and a white lab coat in the middle of the forest fog, leaving the cat-eared girl completely shocked.